Hello, and a very warm welcome to GCN's live coverage of the Zwift Racing League, or the ZRL, as it is more commonly known.
Over the next 6 Mondays, we will be bringing you live coverage of every single minute of the action from the Premier Division in what is going to be the 4th season of the ZRL.
The men's event comes first today, and that will start in just under 15 minutes. And so that gives us plenty of time to go through the rules, the route and the favourites, and also to introduce our special guest for today, Hannah Walker. Welcome along, Hannah.
Pleasure to be here. Really looking forward to it.
Good stuff. Now, you, Hannah, have had your finger on the pulse of ZRL, haven't you, for the past 3 seasons. For anyone who's not seen it before, what can they expect from tonight?
Zwift is the virtual world. It's fast, it's furious, it's going to be action-packed, and we have some of the best esports teams, riders in the world racing this evening, and it's invite only. So you have to earn your place to be in this Premier Division, and yeah, it's going to be very exciting tonight.
Unpredictable racing as well.
Oh, just what we love.
Before we get on to that racing, if Zwift racing is relatively new to you, we'll quickly get you up to speed. How does it all work?
Well, for a start, all the athletes racing tonight are spread all over the world. Each of them, though, is logged into Zwift, so they're racing together in the virtual world, but putting all their effort in at home.
Their bikes are attached to indoor smart trainers with flywheels. They record the power and set the resistance, and they use that generated power and translate it into the virtual world that you see on your screen. Yeah,
importantly though, because there is a lot at stake for these riders here today, the racers in this Premier Division also need a second source of power measure, and also to accurately set their weight before the start as well.
I believe they have to video that weigh-in.
They do indeed, yeah,
so
absolutely.
as to make sure both feet are entirely on the scales. And as Zwift Racing is not confined only to the pro riders, beneath the Premier Division, there are a further 1,800 teams around the world who compete on a Tuesday night in different time zones and ability levels.
Well, yeah, like us. Team GCN, we are competing in Northern Europe's 2nd Division for Category A races. There's also B, C and D as well for different levels of fitness. Now, if we do well in this season, we will get to race in the playoffs and then potentially get promoted.
Or, if you continue with your current downward trajectory, you'll be facing demotion ahead of next season, won't you?
Well, yeah, we will, but let's not dwell on that for now. What it means, though, that these teams racing tonight contain most of the best esports racers in the world. And over the next 6 weeks, they will battle it out every Monday, as we said, live here on GCN Racing.
Well, I guess the question many of you will have right now, exactly how do you win the ZRL?
Well, so there are 6 different races that are taking place on 6 very different courses in 5 distinct Zwift worlds. All but one of the events are points races, where intermediate sprints allow riders to rack up points, with finishing positions then also being converted to points as well.
It is a team sport, and so the riders' results are added together, which then give an overall team position. The points are then allocated accordingly. You get 20 points if you're the winning team, but 0 for last place and everything in between.
Yeah, now that is a lot to take in. It sounds complicated, but it's absolutely not, and you will see that as you watch tonight in the expert hands of our commentators.
And Hannah here is one of those expert commentators. You'll be doing the women's race, which comes later on, but you've had the first 3 series to get yourselves across exactly what's happening. What are you expecting from the men's race tonight?
Well, we're into a new world and a new course tonight, so it's going to be quite unpredictable. Everyone's kind of going into that unknown, and I think those teams who've spent the off-season between the seasons taking a look at the Makuri Islands, and especially tonight's Flatlands, of how the course plays out, which riders putting into the team tonight, who has the attributes for tonight's course. So it's going to be an exciting one. It's going to be fast from the start. Anyone who's watching Zwift Racing for the first time, the starts are very much akin to a cyclocross start or a criterion, where it's fast from the get-go, and then it's almost threshold for the remainder of the race, around 45 minutes, give or take. It's like a time trial or a breakaway effort.
And what would you say the main difference is racing indoors versus out?
The heat. You get very, very hot when racing indoors, so making sure that you've got plenty of fans around you. No people at the side of the road, so plenty to get the electric fans out. And yeah, of course, you've not got races alongside you. You are completely alone in your training or where you are racing in your pain cave. So it's very different in terms of that. You're not rubbing shoulders with other riders. It's all virtual and rubbing shoulders virtually.
This might be where we've been going wrong, Sire. A lack of fans.
Without a doubt, yeah.
Anyway, with that in mind, let's turn our attention now to tonight's racing, and let's start by reminding ourselves what happened in the last men's series.
First up, it is a team time trial. This is aspirational stuff. This is how you ride a team time trial. And they're going to start 3 laps of this beach island loop course. It looks like Jones overtakes Heartbreak for the Canadian, and Jones takes the win.
Ain't no party like a New York party. Look at the pitch. Look how steep this is.
Well, Thrall is there as well. Kurt May comes through on the line. Oh, we can't call it.
Now you can see they have lit the fuse. Is Canyon Esports the bomb here in London? I think so.
Yeah, this is a superb performance by the Norwegian Raiders. But closing is Obet. Obet is closing in the last 100 metres. It's going to be a photo finish on the line. Oh, it's difficult to see who got that one.
Here we go, folks. Time to get out the brass tacks. They bring this down to 150 meters, and that's going to be Thomas Thrall for the back of the group and over the top. This is BZR Sports Solid. This is how you do it. I've got goosebumps. What an incredible finale for our final team time trial. We move into the grand finale of season 3. It is on, and it looks like Pimp Fat Demon just might do it.
Oh, I can't wait. Now, the overall winners from last season are the Canyon Esports team. They go into tonight as Top Gun. In fact, could you believe it? There has never been another overall winner in ZRL on the men's side other than Canyon Esports. Can they keep it up, Hannah, do you think?
Total dominance, and I think they can, especially with less team time trials in this season. Only 1 team time trial this year. So I think for them, the points races are much more suited to them. But let's not forget, there's 18 other teams within this men's league in the Premier Division. You look at the Zwift Warriors, who are going from strength to strength. We've got Next Esports, presented by Ensured, who are incredibly strong. The roster that they've got, Team Saris as well. They have the strength from Mike Cumming and the rest of their team. So they're certainly going to have some challenge. They're not going to have it all their own way. They certainly can't rest on the laurels.
No, they can't. And Canyon actually haven't rested on their laurels. They've made a couple of new signings. One of those is 18-year-old Aidan Sinclair, who'll be lining up alongside the hitters Lionel Vuzassin and Ollie Jones, who incidentally was the first ever winner of the Men's Zwift Academy back in 2017.
Yeah, and they will probably need those reinforcements, won't they? As you were saying, Hannah, but also because actually last year, it was really tight at the top, wasn't it? In fact, if it hadn't been for such a poor opening performance from the Belgian BZR Sports Solid team, they might not have clinched it.
Yeah, well, Canyon actually won fewer rounds than that Belgian squad, which is quite interesting, wasn't it? So it was consistent that it won it for them at the end of the day. However, 3 teams at the other end of the table were demoted at the end of last season, but that means 3 teams have been promoted as well. Can we expect similar things from the runs that have been promoted, Hannah, like we saw from the Belgian team last season?
I think we can, and I think it shows that if you're coming from the community division, you're coming into this Premier Division, that there is this possibility that you can be up there, you can be challenging for the wins on teams on the night, but also for the overall league. So BZR Sports Solid, proven it can be done. And that's not to say that Toyota Cryo RDT or the DPAC team aren't able to challenge.
Yeah. Now, an interesting one from last year was the new Movistar esports team. Am I right in thinking that on their way to 3rd place, they were actually put together from a global talent scouting program, right?
They were. So I think there was around 3,000 applicants on their talent ID program, and all vying for this place, the first World Tour team to have an esports team. So incredibly exciting, and I think when you look at the results they had last year, finishing 3rd overall in the team standings, but also winning the final round with Pim van Diemen, it shows that they've got this group of 5 riders. They've built them well together, and I think you come out of the previous season, you work on your weaknesses, you build on your strengths. So I think this season they're going to come all guns blazing.
It does feel like we're going to have to learn a lot of the teams again. Some familiar names, but some new ones there as well. 2 teams from last year have in fact merged into one. So Next Esports team have joined forces with the Onshore PB pedal power to form Next Esports, presented by Onshore. They came 5th and 11th place respectively as teams last year. Would you expect those 2 combined forces to challenge for the top spot this year?
I certainly do. You take the strongest riders from both teams, you have the ability to put those who are stronger and more suited to the different courses that we have throughout this year. You look at the lineup for tonight with Tom Thrall, Nicky Hug, Brian Duffy, who's a real up-and-coming talent. I think they certainly will be vying. They'll be challenging.
Yeah, to be fair, it must be challenging putting together 2 teams virtually. You know, these riders potentially have never met each other. They're not even potentially been on the same continent as each other, but yet they're going to be racing shoulder to shoulder. So that will be interesting. Are there any other rider transfers that we should be aware of?
Big one, Chris McGlinchey, the rider from Ireland, gone from Vitus Esports. That team is no longer there, so he's gone over to Finesse Esports, a real talent and incredible IRL in real life racing, as well as on in esports on Zwift. Also, Maiko Votes has gone from Dutch racing to Canyon Esports, so they've bolstered their squad there as well. Reese Howell, the team manager, adding Maiko Votes.
Okay, right, well, let's take a quick look at the course for tonight then. As Hannah said, it's the Makuri Islands, a fictional location, but with a Japanese cultural theme. Not that our racers have any time to soak that up.
They face 3 laps of the Flatland loop, 12.8 k's in length, giving a total race distance of just under 40 kilometres. There is a gentle climb each lap, which could make a selection from the back of the group, just like the all-important sprint point, of which there are 2 per lap.
Yeah, now Hannah, this is new to ZRL, isn't it? Makuri Islands were launched in May of this year, so we've not raced it before. What would you expect to see from this fairly flat parkour?
It's going to be fast action from the get-go, and the intermediate sprints, they're going to be hotly contested, because with so many points on offer, with the 10 points and the first 8 riders across the line scoring, it's vital that you don't leave it too late. Of course, there's big points available on the finish line at the finish for the first 30 riders. However, you don't want to rely on that. You want to make sure that your riders are picking up points consistently, with the gentle climb through the 2 villages on the Flatlands loop, it's going to be difficult. Although it says Flatlands loop, it's very much lumps and bumps on tonight's course, and then the descent down to the finish line. It could split. You never know, and we have seen it before on some of the flatter courses, that you do see riders unable to hold the pace.
Well, I'm sure there are some very nervous people across the world right now who are about to compete in round 1, potentially so nervous they might even have lost some weight since their pre-event weigh-in.
Well, yeah, that's a bonus, isn't it? Now, there we go. Probably a good time to head over to the action. We'll hand over to our commentators, Matt Stevens and Dave Towell.
Thank you very much indeed, guys. I cannot wait to get going. This, of course, is the Zwift Racing League. It is the Premier Division, and it is season 1, the 4th season that we've had. And week 1 takes us on a brand new adventure on the Makuri Islands Flatland Loop. As was said before on the soap, it's going to be fast and furious. A rolling fast course, 3 laps, totaling 38.8 kilometres, with a total elevation gain of 298 metres. And alongside me for the ride today, as ever, the legend that is Mr. Dave Towell. Dave, great to have you here. 3 power-ups this week.
Thank you so much, Matt. Let's get stuck in. You can see that they're the classics, aren't they? The big 3, Arrow, Draft, and Feather. We'll talk about how that will impact this race, because there's definitely a gamification element to this. It is old school fury off of the start line, Matt. Today we've got 3 sprints times 2, so 6 sprints along the way before we get into the finale. We'll talk about the point structure out here, as this is going to be a very dynamic start. As Hannah was talking about, they hit out with authority here in the world of Zwift.
Exactly. I certainly cannot wait. Well, they're underway at the moment. As you can see, 14 seconds into the racing. You can see the dossards, the numbers on the back, some new teams, as was talked about before. We've got 3 newly promoted teams, Toyota, Creo, RDT, Fusion, BCT, and then we've got the Deepak Elite squad as well. But Dave, we've got our first set of sprints coming up, or our first sprint, should I say, coming up after only 5 kilometres. Once they go through that arch, there'll be points allocated as described before, but they will get their first of the power-up. So Dave, to anybody new that's watching, we know we've got a lot of the Zwift community watching today, but we'll have some new viewers as well. So just explain what these power-ups are and how important they are to the racing.
Yeah, they're extremely significant, as we still have Grupo Compacto right now. Great time to talk about it. The Aero power-up, that's designated by the helmet icon that you'll see. The when you look at it, the lightweight feather, that might be the big one, but today I think it might be the draft, to tell you the truth, that makes the biggest impact. You can take a little bit of a micro break out there. So let's run through the numbers. 50% increase in the draft effect, and that's for 30 seconds when you see that van power up. The feather, now that represents lightweight. That's going to be 10% of your body weight, but it's a pretty limited 15 seconds that you have that advantage. And then it's another 15-second power-up with that Aero, and obviously that has a huge impact out here as well. Matt, we can start talking about the Canyon team as they look to take their 4th season in a row, but certainly some challenges out here are going to make that a tough run through the next 6 races that we have out here.
Indeed, well, they've got a couple of new signings, as was talked about earlier on. I'm really interested to see how Aidan Sinclair, watch out for him. He's number 2. Ed Laverick just moving to the front there. A very, very talented road rider from Wales. It's down on our start list to GB and Wales. You've just seen floating through, the little icons just floating on the top. They give us that little bit of added information. And there are the stats. Of course, Laverick riding for the Wahoo LeCol team, a newly formed squad. And you can see they, well, 5.4 watts a kilo there. I mean, for a lot of people, they couldn't even reach that. The level, Dave, this that we have in esports over the last few years is every single season has got better and better and better, as augmented as well by the World Championships. We'll talk a little bit about the World Championships, the Esports World Championships in 2022 soon. Lots and lots to talk about, but let's focus on this course because I love riding in this particular world on Zwift. I did a bit of a recon earlier on, and I would call this one a gently rolling, flowing course, but crucially with a very, very fast finish indeed. With about a K to go, they drop off one of the steepest climbs on the circuit, actually. They don't climb up anywhere near anything as steep, but they lose elevation very, very quickly, or 10 to 12% descent into that finish. So I think the timing of a power-up, or even a late solo attack, could win today's race, Dave.
I would completely go with the latter, to tell you the truth. I think that one rider will crack the code. There hasn't been a tremendous amount of racing done out on this course up to this point. So a lot of riders are coming in without a lot of data points. We were talking about, well, it's somewhat fitting here as we're on Makuri Island World in the region of Umezu. We have an all-Japanese team racing with us. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, Matt, where they're racing right now. Really, when you look at the biomarkers, really hard to get your body amped up and racing at full effect at 3 o'clock in the morning. And we were really wondering how they've been able to pull it off, but they've certainly been an effective team out here. There's a danger man, the Dutch rider Pim van Diemen. He's on the Movistar team that certainly will be an impact squad out here today. But I certainly, Matt, wanted to talk about the next presented by Insured team. They have a lot of weapons on that squad. I've been looking at the name Brian Duffy as a rider who I expect to have a breakthrough win in the ZRL here this year. His teammate, the Swiss rider Nicky Hoog, has been riding near the front here. I'm going to throw a tactical question to you, Matt. If you have the ability to, you look at your riders, and are you going to delegate some riders to be going for some of these early sprints, because there's a lot of points available? We should also talk about that point structure as well here, because 8 riders will be scoring points at each of these preliminary sprints. 10 points for the first rider over the line, 8 for second, 6 for third, and then it trickles down to 1 point for the 8th rider. But we'll be doing that 6 times before we get to the finale, where the winner of the race will collect 50 points, 40 for second, 35 for third.
Yep, cheers for that, Dave. Just a first little glimpse, picture-in-picture there of Takato Aikida. One of the most exciting races out there, very, very aggressive. Stormed onto the scene a couple of seasons ago, in fact, for his squad. It's very lightweight. He's only about kind of 57 kilos. He's been winning a lot of hill climb sort of races, but he's just drifting along the back there. And actually, you might think, well, what's he doing at the back? Well, if you know how to ride on Zwift, riding at the back of the bunch, weirdly, is where you get the most draft benefit. So he's kind of knows where to ride, will know when to move up. But Dave, we've got the first intermediate sprint coming up at around the 5 kilometres, so only 400 or 500 metres time. And this is where you can see Aikida just starting to move up, a couple little power-ups being used there as well to get rid of their power-ups before they get one that's randomly given to them through the arch. So that's why we're seeing a lot of power-ups being used. Viersan is on the front. From Canyon Esports. Schweib just goes through. Chris McGlinchey also in the mix there, transferred across. They're going to be coming through that finish very, very quickly indeed. Just look at the numbers, double digits watts per kilo here. There is the arch for the first of this intermediate sprint. Power and McGlinchey, Tolbert, Emmerich also there. This is going to be very, very tight over the top, but it looks like the first blood, as it were, goes to Verm there. 30.5 watts a kilo, but very, very exciting opening intermediate sprints. And interestingly, Dave, lots and lots of riders going for that one. Vermate takes the win from Power, Emmerich, Veal, TM, Tolbert, Stamp and Zilser in 8th place. A little bit of a split now coming up. I would imagine these riders will drop back. But Dave, to quickly answer your question with the first sprint out of the way, I think because of the amount of effort that it takes to put into these sprints, and and how much time there isn't, how much time you haven't got to recuperate between each effort, then these sprints should be, teams are going to have to think very, very wisely indeed. But it's Beast Mode who take 11 points accumulative for their team. Swedish Swifters, 10 points. Very good riding by them. Next in third, then Draft, Team Saris and Pia Auto. No appearance there from Canyon Esports, Dave. That is very, very interesting indeed. But we've seen them do this before, haven't we?
Yeah, you know, they are more than willing to lay back during the early sprints and then come on strong in the finale, so never count Canyon Esports out, no doubt about that, Matt. It is really interesting, though, when you look at the teams that are contesting here, and how about John Werm, the Swedish rider, absolutely threading the needle for that sprint, but I can't imagine there's anybody who's going to want to go through that effort 7 times out here, so absolutely designating riders for the moment out here is going to be critical. So we do have 2 sprints per lap out here, 3 total laps of racing to make up 38K. This will be done and dusted very, very quickly. As you can see, they're flat out flying. As a matter of fact, splits are starting to open up at the back of the group, and it speaks to how aggressive the racing is always here in the world of Zwift.
Yeah, and if you do get detached off the back, still a sizable group there. I think doesn't look as if anybody's just dropped, but I would call the little section they've been up through, they're just going through, they've been through the country sprint as we have seen. This is called the village Onsen. We've got another village coming up just after this through a fishing village. So that little climb that they approached just to this particular point is one of the hardest climbs on the circuit. It's only about 4 or 5%, but I would call that quite sticky. So if you put in a big effort at that sprint, you then need to get back on top of your effort, try and recover a little bit and get back into the slipstream, because if you lose contact with the group after making a big effort, you're done and dusted. It's going to be very, very difficult to get back. And just on that point, an interesting analogy for anybody of you watching this for the first time, a great comparison was made by Hannah on the sofa there, Dave, about the sort of effort in Zwift racing. If you were to compare it to real world, it would be like riding a sharp crit or a cyclocross race, where it's basically quick from the start with these kind of micro intervals as we get our first look at a rider we both know very well, Dave, Tom Thrall.
Yeah, absolutely. This Canadian 100% danger man for the finale. As a matter of fact, he's one of the riders it's easy to imagine attacking late in the race. Another name that came to mind, Leonard Tugels, the Belgian rider. BZR is a team on the move right now, and they are very, very hungry to unseat Canyon. Let's talk quickly then about how the points work here, because you're going to be collecting a lot of points in these bonus sprints, but then in the finale, that's where the lion's share of points await, with 50 points waiting for the winner there. The Canyon, as you mentioned, Matt, they typically have been relatively conservative in the opening sprints and waiting to really, really make their mark at the end of the race. And I have a feeling that might be the game plan out here today as well, as we get a good look at Thomas Thrall. Now, this is the next esports team. This team has tremendous depth right now and a great vibe. They are coming in extremely motivated to get a result here in the Premier League. They're also racing in the community. So they're one of these teams that really, Matt, has built up a franchise right now. They're not just a pro team. Look at this.
Well, there you go, David. Just you teed him up. I don't know whether he's listening to our commentary in his ears. He might be, but Leonard Tugels, the Belgian, has taken a flyer very, very early on. Nearly just under 8 watts a kilo, equating to 500 watts. Tugels is a rider who's unafraid to go long, but this is very, very early on in the race. We've still got around 4 kilometres of this opening lap of 3 to go, 22.7 k's to go. But a bold move by Lenny Tugels. If you just see the bottom of his metrics there, on the bottom right-hand side, there's a little thumbs up. So any of you who are watching from the Zwift community, please do get involved. Fire up your companion app and give these riders a ride on. It really does help, and you feel involved in part of the racing. But interesting move here, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know who's really loving this right now is going to be his teammate on the BZR Sports Solid team, Matthias de Roos. Now, this is an all-Belgian squad. It's really fascinating when you look at the different ways that teams crack the code here. Some teams like Canyon or World Elite Zwifters, it's a global program. Other teams focus much more on a nationality. This might as well be the Belgian national team that we're looking at right now with Leonard Tugels. Now, Matt, in the community, BZR was promoted previous season, so not this year. They've already raced up in the Premier, so they've already got their feet wet. But this team and Leonard Tugels himself had one of the most stunning solo wins in the community, and that was certainly when Leonard Tugels made his name well known. He's opened up a nice gap here. Obviously, in Bike Racing Tactics 101, they teach you that having a rider up the road certainly takes some pressure off your teammates right now. So certainly you don't win the race out here on the first lap of 3, but Leonard Tugels is making a play to talk a little more about BZR through this race because they're putting the pieces in the right places right now.
They certainly are. I do love that kit. As I said, it's very reminiscent of the Belgian national squad as well. So a definite nod to the all-Belgian team. But this is a heck of a move, Dave. But the big question is, can he sustain it? You know, when you go away clear like this, this isn't for show. There's definitely a reason, because this is an effort that he will possibly pay for later on. But look at the ride-ons he's getting, 39, 40. There is a little award, or there is a league for the riders who get the most ride-ons. So please do get involved. As I said, fire up that app. But meanwhile, riders behind are managing to save a lot more energy. We're looking at the stats on the right there, this lovely split screen that we have of Ryan Rudderham of Team Draft in the red, the Canadian, saving a lot more power. As you see, he's just moving to the front there, helping relaying, just moving off the front. So his watts will start to match that of Leonard Tugels. But once he drops into the slipstream of the others within that group, you'll be saving a lot more energy. But Tugels now, he had a lead that maxed out at around 6.5 seconds, but that is slowly being diminished now. He has a gap of 4.6 seconds to the rest of the pack, who are moving along very, very quickly indeed. And it looks like somebody's trying to fire across. This is exactly what he wants to try and form a small breakaway. Several riders now, David, taking this as an opportunity to perhaps form a small breakaway group.
Well, and I have a feeling that this is going to be for the sprint coming up as well. That's going to be Wahoo Lecole that we can see, and this is going to be Ed mode. Hashtag Ed mode is Ed Laverick out of Wales and Hal Davies here. Wahoo Lecole, it's a jailbreak, Matt. We've got a jailbreak pretty early here. Now, this is going to be to collect some points, and I think the Wahoo Lecole boys are going to, oh boy, here they come. So now they're going to come up and over the top. He's still holding on out here, is the Welshman Hal Davies, but then the sprint has fully engaged in right here, right now. Let's see who's going to pick it up. It looks like Anders Voldagger. He was on the podium at the World Championship, one of the highly talented riders. And how about that? Takano Ikeda getting up there, Matt. Great job by the Japanese rider to take maximum bonification.
Well, that was a heck of a sprint by Ikeda. We know he can finish fast. That was a really technical sprint. You really do need to do your homework. Ikeda takes the win on that sprint number 2, which came very, very quickly indeed. Voldagger in second. Then we have Messinio, Victor Mel of Vidar Mel, should I say, of Movistar. Then Felvos, De Moos, and then Knudsen, and then Hug also there, rounding out the top 8. Clearly, that attack with Tugels was to take the win. They didn't quite come off, but you know what? Fortune sometimes favoured the brave. This is the net result of that sprint. Pio Auto Ceramics lead with 12. Beast Mode in second now with 11. Team Swedish Zwift is having a good night so far after the second of our 6 sprints in third. Then we have Zwift Warriors next, World Elite Zwifters draft, Movistar, Fusion ECT, and then Team Saris, of course, changed their name last year from the Pros Closet as they go through. This is the kilometre to go board. this will give us our first sense of what the running's like. Now this, Dave, is where they really start to pick up a lot of speed. Just watch the speed go up here. These riders would have done the recon. Look at this. Explain what this is, Dave, because the speed they're going at now, you can see riders getting into an aero tuck, and that's the first time we've seen this on this course. Explain the kind of the dynamics of the aero tuck to us.
Yeah, it's certainly, we only saw a few riders dropping into that aero tuck, but unlike the UCI, we don't have the same safety issues out here. And you hit a certain threshold with speed, and you're able to catch another micro break out there. And Matt, that very well could be the difference out here today. This is Brian Duffy Jr. we were talking about. He's a rider to watch. Without any doubt, this next esports team has come looking to make a mark out here today. It's interesting when you look at how the points are being distributed amongst the teams, Matt. No one team is really able to stand out at this point. It speaks to the parity that we've got in the ZRL right now. At this point now, you're going to have an exceptional combined team effort to win. No one rider or even two riders on a team would be enough to have an impact in this league. You've got to have that depth.
Well, we've got Hool on the front there, but just looking behind, you can see there is a big split in this peloton. And that came as a result of the many riders accelerating for that sprint, just over that little drag. So there's a group of about 12 or 15 riders, Dave. I'm just going to get some more detailed information for you about this split. So we have 38 riders in this front group. Then 2.5 seconds behind, you have the likes of Anders Spoldega of PO Auto Ceramic Speed, desperately trying to get back in contact. Dave, they need to do this sooner rather than later, don't they?
Yeah, you do not have a long-term plan to fixing this situation. It's right here, right now. Got to give credit to a few of the teams out here, but Kirchmeier is absolutely moving forward. That's going to be the team in the black and yellow. They're a team based out of Germany and Austria here. I have to say, right now, this is a huge moment early in the race. If these riders don't get back into this group, I don't know that they've got a chance to be there for the finale, Matt.
Well, Dave, there's 51 riders. The group was split into three, and this is something we don't see very often at all, but clearly one or two riders just couldn't maintain that pace. Clearly over the top, just let the wheel go. That particularly fast section leading in with about a kilometre to go, I think is going to be crucial. And this is a lot of damage that has been done. So there's only 50. The last rider in the front group at the moment is Chris McGlinchey. There's then one rider on his own, still fighting to get back in contact. That is... well, he's actually got back on now, but the gap to the rest of the field, Dave, is now 8 seconds. So the riders here will know exactly what's going on. So we'll have teams with lots of numbers up front starting to work. Now, Dave, we talked a little bit at the top of the show on the sofa. We've already touched on it, the communication between the teams. That is a vital, important component part of e-racing, isn't it? Racing on Zwift. So these teams will be talking either on WhatsApp or commonly they use Discord, won't they? Just explain a little bit about the importance of comms and how that's done.
Well, I think a great example is the Canyon team, right? They're a team that's spread out around the world, but they are always on the same page. They don't have any trouble communicating, and you're absolutely right, Matt. Discord is the way that I believe every team at this point is using Discord to communicate. It is imperative, and you're going to see throughout the race that as you have some of these crisis moments, the teams that are in communication are able to solve that riddle much quicker out here. I see Mako Volts has moved up. He's a previous winner out here, a Dutch rider. He's one of the huge transfers coming from our third into our fourth season here, as he now joining a team that, well, I mean, they had won the championship in the ZRL the last 3 years, and adding some horsepower like the Dutch rider Volts, that's a big pickup. That's going to be Maarten Mertens, the Belgian rider that we're looking at. It's quite a mix, but obviously this group has made, I don't know, a mini selection out here, I would say, Matt.
They have, and it's the bunch itself, this front group of 50, just getting some exact stats for, 51 riders, and the gap is growing out now. 8.8 seconds to the next group, being led by Franklin Almeida of the World of Elite Zwifters. Daniel Gould is there as well. Just looking at some of the key names, there are some big riders. Lennart Tugels hasn't made that split as well, but most of the race favourites, you'd imagine, as we're looking at Lionel Vujasan there with that nice green screen, one of the most consistent riders in the ZRL. But importantly, despite he's one of the most high-profile riders, Dave, isn't he? But still without that key win.
Yeah, I think if we went back and graded Lionel in the body of his work, he has been one of the top 3 racers that we've seen in the ZRL. And you're right, he's just waiting for that cherry on top of the sundae to make it, to get that big win. It very well could come today. This is a great course for Lionel here. Tucked right into the sweet spot of the group. You can see his Canyon team. So they know the score out here. And really, if you could put 3 riders into the top 10 at the finale and pick up a few points along the way, that very well could be enough for Canyon out here. And right now, look at them blanketing the front of the race. You can see that magenta and purple jersey of the most dominant team on the men's side of things. For the women, Hino has also swept the last 3 seasons, but right now Canyon very well positioned. You take a look at some Movistar jerseys up there near the front, and to be fair, the Toyota Cryo team having a strong ride out here today as well. The South African rider Eddie Uhl is someone I would be watching for in the finale today.
Yeah, watch out for Eddie Uhl. Very fast rider indeed, very strong. But we've got, there's at least, well, there is 4 riders from Canyon Esports in the mix there. Vuyasan, we've talked about him. Ollie Jones, the former winner back in 2017 of the Zwift Academy, very decorated and consistent at this level. Ollie Jones is there. Aidan Sinclair, the youngster, they talked about him at the top on the sofa, only 18 years of age, but still he has managed to get in this elite group of riders here. You can see a lot of drafts being used there, getting their power-ups used up before they get a chance to get the next one. And using a draft at this point just helps you blink off the wheel in front. We've got the next sprint coming up very shortly. Riders clearly trying to wind this up. Vuyasan moving through to the front now. A couple of featherweight power-ups. Remember, riders cannot determine or choose which power-ups they get. It's just coming round this curve now. Raham Mel is at the front. McGlinchey, the Irishman, is coming through as well. Kirkmare there as well. Richard is on the front, in fact. Vuyasan, though, takes the points. Maximum points. The first time we've seen Vuyasan emerge victorious in a sprint tonight. So, Dave, they were sitting back, but from this group of 51 riders, they've got 4 riders in this front group and are now hoovering up the points as we go. Good move there.
Yeah, Lionel is going to be ecstatic to have the good legs back. He has not had we had a long break from our previous season coming into the racing here today, and Lionel's been through quite a bit, so it's very nice to see that he is hitting hard out there. Here's another one of the top riders from the league, without a doubt, out of Northern Ireland. This is Christopher McGlinchey that we're in camera with now, an extremely accomplished and competent racer that we've got, and certainly he's going to be one of our danger men late in this race. So we'll have a chance to look at how the points are stacking up. That was our 3rd bonus sprint out here. So 3 more bonus sprints before we move into finale mode.
Indeed, a great shot of McGlinchey there. You could see he was one of the several riders that went for the sprint, but look how hard he's trying to work just to stay in the group. He is well inside the slipstream, but still, look at the effort. Nearly just under pushing 6 watts a kilo just to stay in this group. They're coming up this little drag. This is a really, what I would call, sticky bit of road. It's not overly steep. It's between 4 and 5% gradient. The featherweight power-ups are being used at the moment up as well, just to lighten the weight up here, just to change that all-important power to weight ratio. There's not a lot of opportunities to use the featherweight power up on this course, but that particular section was one of them as we continue to focus on McGlinchey. We've got the points, I believe, coming up now. And Rod and Q they are. There is confirmation. Vuyasan, maximum points for him ahead of Kirkmare, Mel, McGlinchey. Ollie Jones making 2 riders in the top 8 there for Canyon. Also 2 riders from Movistar, the second of which is Van Diemen, the Dutchman. Then we have Wichert and Ryan Larson there for Saris. Well, this is a breathtakingly quick race. Only 11.5 Ks to go, Dave. This is going very quickly. Movistar have the most points, but equal, should I say, on points with Canyon Esports. 2 points behind PO Auto Ceramics. Beast Mode, team Swedish Zwifters, the Warriors, next Esport, Kirkmare, World of Elite Zwifters, and then Draft with 5 points. So this is hotting up to be very interesting, Dave. And look at that empty bit of tarmac, that virtual tarmac, saying to us, this is where the winner is going to come from. I cannot see that group getting back on as we take a look at Mako Voits.
A previous winner in the ZRL. And Matt, when you go back and look at that points table, you can see that no one team is standing out at all. As they say in Belgium, the tall tree takes the wind. Well, we don't have a tall tree in this race yet. It's very even as you look at that distribution of the bonus points. Here's a man that a lot of eyeballs will be on the fourth, the finale here today, as Michael Volz has been a previous winner in the ZRL. His teammate, we've been talking about Lionel Bjaasen quite a bit here. So Canyon is really fighting on all of the fronts out here. So, you know, we were talking about the fact that they don't always go for every bonus sprint, but clearly they've activated that effort out here now, and it looks like we've got another attack. And this is going to be, I believe, the American on Restart Racing, Daniel Jemrozik, that we've got Brian Duffy Jr. on the next team moving up. And then it's a lot of North Americans right now, as that's going to be the Canadian Ryer Ruddenham. But this is Jemrozik in the green off of the front.
It is a good move by Daniel Jemrozik of Restart Racing, kicking out 7.5 watts a kilo. He's opening up a nice little lead there, 3 seconds. They are his vital statistics. Watts on the left-hand side, equating to watts per kilo. RPM, that's revolutions a minute, as you'll all know, and then the all-important heart rate. Riders, of course, cannot race without a heart rate monitor at this level, and that equates to 45 kilometers an hour. Come on, guys out there. Come on, community. Give this guy some more power-ups, not power-ups, no, that would be slightly cheating giving him power-ups. Give him some more ride-ons just to boost those up. Recknauer trying to get across the gap there. The race is on here, Dave. Jemrozik looks as if he might be joined by the German Recknauer, who's punting across this gap at speed. This race has really, really hotted up. This is a real sporting racing circuit. It's fast, it's rolling, plenty of opportunities to try and attack, although Recknauer has been brought back, leaving the American out in front solo with a gap now, Dave, of 5 seconds and moving up.
Yeah, I must say, just seeing the World Elite Zwifters jersey there, if it does come down to a group sprint, certainly Franklin Almeida, the Brazilian rider, is going to be a man to watch. This is our solo leader, absolutely flogging himself like a rented mule right now. Big effort here, Matt. So Daniel Jemrozik here, this is his wheelhouse. Absolutely, this man knows how to go deep, deep into the pain cave and just scrape every last watt he can off the wall. But this gap is growing. It's gone out to 10 seconds back to the Peloton now. So Jimmy Kershaw, Havan Jelness leading the chase. But right now, this is a huge move from Daniel Jemrozik.
Well, the Restart Racing rider is looking very, very good. We got that glimpse of him out of the saddle, turning an absolutely huge gear to try and maintain the speed. We see some riders using a sat down, using a lower cadence. Other riders put a lot more torque through the cranks. Kind of there's so many different techniques you can use to generate power. But Daniel Jemrozik is moving at just under 50 k's an hour there. He's got to be right inside threshold now, 178 beats a minute, but a pretty high cadence now, 100 RPM plus. But his watts per kilo are starting to drop because this is a big, big effort. McGlinchey now trying to get across the gap. The gap 10 seconds to the American from Restart Racing, who could hold on to get this next intermediate sprint. McGlinchey has now been caught by Hewell Davis of Wahoo Lacole there in that rather fetching purple and pink kit. This is a fantastic race so far, Dave. I cannot believe that the bunch has been split in half so early. This is unprecedented on a circuit like this.
The racers make the race, and that is exactly what is happening right now. Daniel Jemrozik putting them under a lot of pressure. This is going to be Hal Davies, the Welsh rider that we're looking at for Wahoo Lacole, trying to track him down. But you can see that the Peloton is hungry. They realize that there's another batch of points going to be distributed out here. So can Jemrozik hold on to pick up those points? The gap is coming down just a little bit, right at 8 seconds now from Jemrozik back to this group of monsters here.
Well, he's putting in a really strong performance. It's still just under 8 seconds. Johannes Recknauer of Kirkmare is doing a lot of the chasing, along with Ben Jones from Deepak Elite Canon Esports. Now they're using Spencer Segerbrook, the American, to try and bring this gap back down. Vujasan never too far away. Michael Knudsen is also there from Denmark for PO Auto Ceramic Speed. But Jemrozik is absolutely flying. This is another one of these little short little climbs. Again, I wouldn't call them steep at all, but they really help kind of mix that rhythm up, and you'll see the watts just really start to increase. So the effort of Jemrozik has been away now, Dave, for a couple of kilometers. The effort is really starting to tell, but he's still managing to kick out 5 watts a kilo, but the gap is starting to come down. You can see the bunch. They've got him in their crosshairs. Can he hold on to take this next sprint, which is coming up very, very shortly indeed? Dave, the gap's continuing to plummet. He must be, well, absolutely racked with pain right now.
Yeah, at the limit, no doubt about it, but you can see the gameplay, and the Peloton is going to make the catch right as they're already sprinting for those 10 bonus points for the first rider coming up and over the top of the line. That's going to be Christoph Thiem, the German rider, on beast mode. So beast mode making their way up to the front, but it looks like a lot of Canyon here. Lionel Viasen, Ollie Jones. Oh boy, we're going to have to take a look at how that one scores. The first 8 riders over the line will be picking up points for their team and throwing them into the tally. Stefan Kerkmeyer has been up there quite a bit here today. There's another previous winner, the Danish rider Gjeldnæs. Let's see how this one sorts out, though, Matt, as we're now right into the business end of this race for the men.
Yep, we'll be coming through next time through. You can just see on the right-hand side a relic of history's past in this beautiful world of Makuri. There's so many references to Japanese culture. Let's have a look at the confirmation. Ollie Jones and Lari Wuyasan make it a 1-2 for Canyon, 10 and 8. Glednæs is there from Callas Esports with 6th. Then we have Kirkmeyer, Ikeda, Van den Eckhout is also in the mix, and then Team and Ozils. So that is really going to put Canyon in the driving seat. I don't need to, I'm not great at maths, Dave, but pretty much working that out from a rudimentary perspective. Canyon are going to be leaving. That's half of the sprints now done. Well over half. 4 of the sprints are now done. They'll be coming through 1 lap to go very shortly. This is that super quick descent. This is where we saw a lot of riders lose contact over the top as we look at Ollie Jones, the New Zealander, in the centre of the screen there.
Yeah, I might not be great at math, but I can tell which way the wind is blowing, and that is certainly Canyon's direction as they look really good on the front. That's Ollie Jones again, so they're kind of establishing a beachhead up there, Matt.
Okay, should be getting a replay of that sprint in just a few moments' time before they get the virtual bell. There is the finishing arc. Let's have a look at that sprint again. Lovely aerial shot of domination by Canyon, both with, you can just see on the line, well, that was very close. It was Harvard Glednæs in the red who would take it, was carrying a lot of speed through the sprint, but quite clearly there it is, the 2 riders from Canyon. Perfectly timed sprint by both of them, using the draft power up to assist. Well, breathless stuff, Dave. We're coming in with 1 lap to go now and looking at Ollie Jones. Ollie Jones, he always looks so comfortable. The young New Zealander, former winner of the Zwift Academy, makes such a tough sport look so easy. He's got his fan on, and we know that he's got that ice towel around his neck as well, but Ollie Jones looking good.
Yeah, super efficient here without any doubt. It's hard to imagine it was all the way back in 2017 that Ollie was winning that Zwift Academy, and he is still a major force to be dealing with out here on his Canyon team. And you can see Canyon has the entire squad riding up at the front end of the peloton here, so they have not missed a step out here today. We apologize. We'll be getting you those points totals as soon as we can here, but certainly it looks like Canyon is starting to make their force being felt out here. 32 points now, so they are moving up and away from the Movistar E team, tied on 14 with the Zwift Warriors. The team from Japan punching above their weight out here today. And then the German team, Beast Mode. Those are 2 of our teams that are national based, Japanese for the Zwift Warriors, and then Beast Mode, an all German squad. Kirkmeyer there, 13 points in 5th. That's a German, Austrian team, I think a Swiss rider or 2 on that team. And then the Danish squad, PO Auto Ceramics. That's where we stand right now.
Well, Ollie Jones moving to the front again there. Yeah, that is a dominating lead. There's 2 more sprints still to come, and then, well, only 2 kilometers after that final sprint, we'll have the finish line with 50 points on offer for the win, 40 for second, 35 for third, and then 30 points for 4th place. So a lot of points on offer, the vast majority of the points, as you would expect, at the end of the race. Remember, this is a points race. It's all about getting as many riders as you can towards the head of affairs to score maximum points, and the team that accumulates the most points on the night will then get separate points for the overall ranking. 20 points for the first team, down to 19th place. 1 point is available there. Now, in this front group, Dave, this has been whittled down even further. It's one of my favourite commentary terms to describe what happens to a group. This is our first view of another rider from Finland. This is Teppo Lorio with his headphones on, looking up a little bit. I do love that new kit, but he's sat in the middle of that bunch, just only 4 watts a kilo. But we've only have, in this front group now, Dave, 43 riders. So another 8 riders on that last lap were dropped. So this bunch now is distinctly smaller than when we began, but great to see the in-house view there of Teppo Lorio, who looks very focused. And this is the first opportunity we've seen when nobody's attacked, Dave. This race has been very, very attritional so far. So the riders just taking a bit of a breath and thinking how they're going to tackle these next 2 sprints, and then, of course, the all-important finish.
Johannes Reckenauer here for Kirkmeyer. They're going to make this a rough run into the finish line. Matt, you start wondering who's the best sprinter left, as I'm hearing that Franklin Almeida has been dropped out of this group. So he was going to be one of my shortlisted danger men, but that's no longer the case here. You start wondering 2 things, really. Who's going to make that late race attack and put everybody under pressure? And it certainly looks like Johannes Reckenauer has gotten that memo. As you can see, Wahoo Lacole and Draft the team in red. They've got some riders that could be making a big impact here for the finale. That's Howell Davies, the Welshman there in the magenta and blue of Wahoo Lacole, and then right behind him, Ryan Rutherham, who absolutely is a man that is looking to make a mark out here. That's Zale up in the front of this group, and Nicky Hoog moving up now, the Swiss rider here. So little bit of a reshuffling of the deck going on in the front of the peloton. Matt, I have a feeling this group sprints together, though. I don't know that any one rider is going to be able to even think about holding off a peloton this strong at this point.
No, definitely not. Well, the riders now just thinking about the finish. Great to see a lot more ride-ons happening as well. I'm going to remind you again, please do get involved in the comments. Please do get involved in giving these riders your support as well, as we look at the Welshman turning a huge gear there. Hewell Davis there, 48 ride-ons for the Welshman. Looks like he's not in his cave. That to me looks clearly like a garage. Again, there's an example of a rider using that low cadence, high torque. Just relieves the back a little bit. Just thundering down on the pedals. Great shot mid-peloton. Sat in the slipstream of those other riders, but still needing to stay in this front group, Dave, to put out, you know, approaching between 5 and 6 watts a kilo just to stay in this group. Another really clear indication to those of you who've ridden out in the community, to those who just ride on Zwift for fitness, just for fun, just how strong these riders are to stay in the front group at this sort of level, Dave.
The rider that I think going to have his breakthrough moment here today, it's looking really strong all day long, is Brian Duffy of the Next Esports Insured team. He's positioned himself perfectly. He's got to be excited for this opportunity, going to the line with the best sprinters in esports out here. There's another danger man, Jimmy Kershaw of the Movistar team, that all-star Movistar team. A little bit of a split happening on the front, so they're starting to apply the pressure here. Boy, Howell Davies has not missed a step out here. That's going to be Nicky Hoog, the Swiss rider there, moving up to the front. I really believe, Matt, they're trying to set this one up for Duffy Jr. today.
Yep, this is Nicky Hoog. He's looking good. Duffy Jr. becoming towards the next intermediate sprint now. You can just see the power-ups being dropped here. A lot of the draft power-ups been used. A couple of aero power-ups from the Movistar riders who've got at least three riders in this front group. 4 riders from Canyon Esports. Thiem is now at the front. So the aero power-up being dropped, which makes you more aero, remember, for 15 seconds. This rider's going very long, but Ollie Jones is on his wheel. Thiem looks like he might hold on. No, he hasn't. Ollie Jones goes straight past him for maximum points again for Canyon. What a sprint there by the New Zealander. Superb sprints. Jones takes maximum points ahead of Thiem and O'Zils. Then we have Villiers, Kirkmeyer in 5th. Then Loriot for Wahoo Lacole. Then we have Martins and Ryan Larson from Saris there, the American, rounding out the points, which that little attack there for those points has started to really stretch this group out. But what a dominant performance so far, Dave, by Canyon Esports. 42 points ahead of Beast Mode, who are having a superb night with 28 points so far. Remember, still 50 on the line for the finish. Kirkmeyer 3rd. Then we have Movistar, Zwift, Warriors, Pure Auto, Ceramic Speed, Team Swedish Zwifters, Next Esports, Toyota Cryo, and then World of Elite Zwift. 10th so far with 6. Let's have a look at that again. Break this down for us, Dave. Let's have a look at that again in slow motion.
Yeah, these sprints, really, it turns out it's been the story of the day, no doubt about it. We're going to go back, and you can see that Ollie Jones looked to be in very, very good position and holds on there. Christoph Thiem is the German rider here who's going to come across the line, picking up 2nd place points out here for the Beast Mode team, that German squad. But I don't know that all of the heavy hitters were contesting that one. I think a few riders, Matt, are saving it all for the finale here, expecting to see some new names moving up into our top 10 here.
Well, this is the final time up this horrible little drag. It really is quite nice. You can see the grass. It's almost like a pathway through to the village onsen. Next up after this will be the fishing village. This is where the road just flats out a little bit. Just riders trying to drop a few little featherweight power-ups on that drag just to save a little bit of energy as we look at Van Diemen. Van Diemen's such a good rider. I mean, I'm trying to, Dave, finally answer the question that you raised about the fastest rider. I mean, with Johannes Recknauer, who we know we can, he's got a very strong kick. Ollie Jones is very fast from Canyon Esports. He's in the front. We know how quick Vujasan is, but he's never managed to win a race just yet. Could this be the one for him? Jimmy Kershaw of Movistar, also very quick, as is Chris McGlinchey, who's also in this front group. And as you said before, next Esport powered by Insured, watch out for Brian Duffy Jr. And maybe a long shot for maybe going long, I think could be Mike Cumming from Team Saris, who has been pretty quiet, but he is a rider of great capacity in the TT and climbs as we look at Nicky Hoog, another rider, Dave. Look at that. Looks like he's in a Formula One pit lane there or something. Really, almost like an operating third that he's riding there. That is the neatest, most shiny paint cave I've ever seen.
Yeah, it looks like he's riding in heaven, I would say. All white. I expect an angel to go floating by behind him there. You know what? I'd have to say, Matt, very Swiss. That looks very Swiss. Clean, sterile. He's in a wattage laboratory. He's not a wattage cottage. Those aren't sterile.
A wattage lab for Nicky Hoog. Great to see there as well. Stripped down. He's got double fanage, a fan on the left and a fan on the right-hand side. But we've got another little attack. The American Jamrosik has already attacked once before. Clearly feeling very good. Pretty much the same section of road to try and go clean. Stolen just under a second, but Recknauer kicking out 8.4 watts a kilo, is trying to go across the gap, and immediately the riders from Movistar are trying to negate this move, because this looks pretty dangerous. If Dramrosic and Recknauer go clear, that could be a very formidable duo.
These two have been relentless out here today. Matt, you said it earlier, fortune favors the bold. Even if this doesn't win the race for Kirkmeyer in Recknauer's case, or restart in Jamrosik's case, it's certainly moving some pieces around on the board. Here comes Movistar now, so they want to be a part of this. Now the window has opened up for that late race attack, but a very attentive Peloton. Vidar Mel, the Norwegian rider, looks like he's going to shut this down. The story now, Matt, is cover and kill at the front of this bike race. They are not going to give any leash at all, as clearly Canyon wants a sprint today.
Yep, certainly does. Everybody who kind of wants to try and win this one. This is where, Dave, as well as having good legs and a bit of a plan and the power up that you want, that knowledge of the finish, we've seen how it split it before. We've seen how much pace you can carry off in the last 1,500 meters before the road flattens to the line. So getting the right power up is going to be crucial. But Dave, getting the right plan, they're just going under these beautiful cherry blossoms which characterize this lovely course, just over another one of the numerous bridges that link these islands together. But we are set fair. We've got one more sprint before the finish, Dave. So this is where communication between the teams is absolutely vital. They're going to need to get a sense of how riders are feeling and if they need to change a preordained plan. So as well as having good legs, crucial that they get the comms right now, Dave.
A little bit of luck wouldn't hurt as well, Matt. Everything you said is 100% true. It's almost like that Luke Skywalker and the Death Star experience. You've got to get the timing exactly right on this one. You really do. When you watch esports sprints, it is so easy into getting baited into going out a little bit early. And it's the rider. It's hard to believe that patience is a virtue in esports racing, but it might even be micro patience that we're talking about, Matt. Just a tiny bit, not taking the bait early and then catching that wave, because you will see a real surge coming out of this group. And that's assuming that it is a sprint, because I have to believe that there's one rider here that wants to cut against the grain here for the finale. Someone's got to come out of the woodwork. It wouldn't be surprising if it was the Northern Irish rider Christopher McGlinchey. McGlinchey moving over from the Vetus team to be with Finesse here. That's a huge ad for that Finesse team. He's a really experienced esports racer, but this is it. We're down to our brass tacks here on day one, race one for the men.
Well, there is Chris McGlinchey again. Our producers providing a lovely little bit of picture-in-picture for the Irishman with 33 ride-ons there, holding steady, mid-pack there, using the draft of the others to just try and save as much as he can. I have a feeling he might just hold back and go for the sprint. But one rider that we need to talk about that hasn't done any attacking yet or got involved in the sprints is Majko Voets. We've seen him win before bunch sprints. We saw him last season win in Richmond in a big 50-rider bunch sprint. He hasn't done any of the points accumulations for Canyon Esports. So Dave, watch out for him in the sprint, assuming, well, even if he gets the wrong power up, he'll still try and go for it. But the way that Canyon Esports have ridden this race so far suggests to me they're protecting him for one effort at the end.
Completely agree, Matt. I'll sign off on that. I have a feeling now for Canyon Esports, if they can put 3 riders in the top 10 with one of them in the top 5, that's probably going to be enough to take the win here. Again, they come in as the dominant force in esports racing, talking about Canyon Esports, and clearly they're not missing a step. Here's an addition to the team this season, the Dutch rider who is a previous winner, but on a different team. So that was a really nice pickup. That might be the difference maker out here. Michael Voets, the Dutch rider on Canyon. This is going to be Canadian. Ryan Rutherham just off the front now as, oh boy, they are really pressing. Coming up on 3K to go. This is the chase.
This has got Chris McGlinch and Wreck now. This is the lead group at the moment. The sprint's coming up. This is a really technical sprint. Lots of lefts and rights. They've only got about 400 meters to go. They're missighted from the sprints, just coming into sight now. Kirkmeyer, Van Diemen, Akita there again. Ollie Jones also in the mix. Van Diemen, it looks like they've got Akita rolls through. Confirmation, wow. Akita is absolutely flying today. Van Diemen, the Dutchman for the Spanish esports Movistar team in second. Ollie Jones consistent as ever in third. Then we have the other Jones, Kirkmeyer, Vujasan again in the top 8. Then Martins for Cryer, and then Zilser is there as well in the mix for. He's riding for, I should say, beast mode, powered by Rose. Now, we haven't got very long to go now, Dave. This is where things get a bit technical. Under 2 kilometers to go for the final.
Yeah, really, we're down to about 1.5K at this point. You cannot afford to miss a step. It's certainly looking like we've got one rider making a move. Odlin here taking a dig, but I don't think that's going to be enough as they're going to bear down on him. We're going to hit the reset button one more time here as we are rapidly coming up on the final K of racing. So we're done with all of our bonus sprints. It's 51 points that Canyon Esports was able to obtain along the way. Beast Mode sitting in second now on points with 29. And you can see the Zwift racing team out of Japan sitting third. We're at 1K to go. There is the cut.
1K to go. Witchet on the front for Toyota, Cryo RDT in that blue and white. Watch out for the riders from Canyon Esports. Remember, they've got 4 in the front. They're in that lovely fetching purple and blue kit. Movistar, of course, in that traditional blue. Watch out for, as well, the Beast Mode powered by Rose team in that black and orange. Kershaw now riding hard on the front. This is this exceptionally quick run into the line. You can just see on the right-hand side, there is the finish. They're going to carry a lot of speed off this very, very steep descent before we swing right. And then left again. Power-ups being used everywhere. There's a flotilla, a flurry of power-ups with 300 meters to go. Brian Duffy Jr. in the front. Thrall there. De Roos, Messinho. Duffy's dropped back. Maroos is in the front. Mel is there as well. Messinho's moving up. Tom Thrall is moving through. Barnes is in the front, though. Barnes, it looks like he takes it on the line. Well, Barnes was leading or going through. We'll get confirmation, but I think it was Next Esports powered by Insured, James Barnes, that took the win there. Absolutely sensational stuff. Rode invisibly. This is the chase group behind. We'll take a breath, Dave, in a minute and have a look at that finish again. This is the chase group behind. There are no more points left on the table. All of the points will have been taken from that front group of 40 riders as the Wild Boar on the left-hand side thankfully didn't infiltrate the peloton. Thank goodness for that we didn't have an esports-based accident. But this is the rest of the group. They lost nearly a minute, Dave. Still a K to go for the chasers behind. But talk us through for the rest of the last K for the rest of the field. But what an attritional race. But importantly, Dave, we are well ahead of schedule. That was exceptionally fast as well.
Well, how about Next East Insured here as they took 2 spots on the podium today, as I believe Thomas Thrall will end up in the 3rd spot right behind Mateus de Roos, and that is significant. There's a lot of points on top of the table at the finish, and let's see what that does for Next Insured. This is going to be now the minor placings. As a matter of fact, I actually don't know that there's any points left for these riders now at the finish line. We score 30 deep.
Yep, 300 meters to go for the rest of the group. They're still sprinting it out. Good practice, of course, for future rounds. A really strong effort over the bridge. They're just rounding the corner there. Riders just making sure they're completely empty in the tank. Looks like Lisson, just rolled on the line there. I think that was one of the riders from the World of Elite Zwifters who just took the sprint there. But Dave, an attritional race, a fast race. This is the replay. We'll probably have a look at this from a couple of angles, but look at that, several lengths clear. James Barnes, I mean, averaged 4.6 watts a kilo, and the rest of the group lined out. Now, Dave, I think he clearly timed his sprint right, but coming off that drop in, I think really determined the shape of the peloton there and also the way they finished. I think that finish came up very, very quickly. So James Barnes takes the win, the first at this level for the next esports team. Matthias de Roos is there for the Belgian Zwifters in second. And as you quite rightly called, Dave, the Canadian Thomas Thrall makes it 2 on at the podium for that team. Absolutely superb. Then Casino, Talbot, Gledners, Mike Cumming there in 7th. Vujasan, the first home of Canyon, Brian Duffy Jr. there, making 3 inside the top 10 for next esports. Well, that is absolutely sensational. And rounding out the top 10 is Ben Jones. Whoa.
Will that be enough, Matt? Because Lionel Vujasan ending up in 7th place, so they did not collect many points at the finish. When you look at Canyon there, it is going to come down to a handful of points, one way or the other, because Next, presented by Insured, was sitting right there. This is going to be an interesting tally.
We're going to have another look. I mean, we finished well ahead of time, so we can sit back, relax a little bit, and have a look at another key part of this race. It was the final sprint before the actual finish line, so the final point sprint, which we saw here. And again,
this was at 2K to go.
Yep. Well, there we go.
So again, we're reviewing the last bonus sprint.
Exactly. I mean, Dave, the type of effort that it takes to put in an all-out sprint with only 2 kilometers to go, and at the speed they were traveling, that equated to just around 2 minutes to recover for the final. I do love the way that these, not just the courses have been designed, I like the kind of disruptive way that these all-important points have been placed around these courses, because it's not just simple. You can't just sit in. You've got to be aggressive. I do believe we might actually see this final sprint again as our camera scans this beautiful. Look at the size of that pumpkin. We're going to have a look at the all of the sprints again, I believe. As we're getting a little round of applause there, Dave, from one of our farmers. So this is the opening sprint of the day. And
this would have been, I think, a little bit later, because that was when Canyon started making their move. So I'm going to guess that's close to the middle part of the race.
That's
they
right.
didn't
I think,
contest the first couple. Right.
Totally right. Totally, Dave. And then they started to dominate with Ollie Jones, Lionel Vujasan taking a lot of points. So, and heading into the final sprint, there he is again. And heading into the final sprint, they actually were well in the lead. But as you said, this was the penultimate sprint. We've got another one coming up, and that was taken by Gledners, I think, of Callas on that particular occasion. And that was the final sprint again.
That was the finish.
The sprint to the line where James Barnes. I mean, we've got a new team to talk about, Dave, haven't we? We've got a new team to really conjure with, because we've not seen anything like this from Next Esports powered by Insured before. Not just the win and a third place in the podium. We can actually go through a top 30 rider breakdown, Dave. We've looked at the top 10. Let's have a look. Well, we've seen that before. This is the finish line points. So 50 for Barnes. De Roos 40, Thrall 35, and then Messenio, Talbot, Gledners, Cumming, Vujasan, Brian Duffy Jr. We talked about him a lot then. These are the rest of the points. Mel in 11th, Knudsen in 12th, Larsen, Davies, Segerbrook, Salze, Zambrodzik, Wurtz, Van Diemen, and then Hoog, scoring more points for Next Esports as well. Aidan Sinclair, the young 18-year-old there in a 21st place, scoring 10 valuable points. Oscar Vid, Ole Zils. Then we have the final rider from Canyon in 24th, Ollie Jones, Lauro Martins Kamp, Farup Ritzinger, Voulier. They are the 30 riders that on the opening round of the ZRL have all scored points. Dave, it was a pleasure commentating on that race. It went very, very quickly indeed. I'm pretty breathless, but a last word from you before we throw back to our team on the sofa.
Well, I think it's worth noting that Next Insured was a community team only 2 seasons ago, and here they are now having a massive impact in the Premier League. Got to say, James Barnes, he's a rider on Next Insured that is a community favorite. So it is really nice to see these riders making this quantum leap up into Premier League and more than holding their own. A huge congratulations to Next Esport, presented by Insured and James Barnes today.
Well, Dave, as I said, it was a pleasure commentating with you. Let's head back to the sofa to get a little bit more of a debrief and a look at what that means for the overall points for the teams. Back over to you guys.
Wow, that was a lot of power going on there, wasn't it? And we'll wait and see very shortly whether Canyon Esports were upset at the very last, because that was quite the performance from the teams behind them just then. And now, before we started that race, we mentioned that you can get promoted to the Premier Division if you do well enough over the course of the ZRL. Si has decided he no longer wants to be promoted to the Premier Division because he was reading those numbers and actually weeping.
Well, that is true, but I think the fact that teams that have been promoted to the Premier League and then they've actually performed really well. So I think it does show that there's quite a strength in depth amongst the ZRL, isn't it? Because the gap is obviously there, but perhaps not quite as big. Would you agree, Hannah?
Yeah, I certainly would. And, you know, you go from season 3 into this season, you've got that time, as we said before, to work on your weaknesses, make sure you know your strength as well. So I think the opportunity is there to be able to perform in the Premier Division, even if you've just come straight out of the Community Division. And Barnes showing that very much so.
Yeah, I have to admit, I don't know a lot of the riders racing. You know, I spend more time watching the pro racing out on the road. I know most of those names, but one that I do know very well is Ollie Jones, because as we mentioned beforehand, he was the Academy winner back in 2017. Now, he spent a year with the Quebecer Assos Continental team. Dimension Data it was at the time. No standout results, but I did just look a few moments ago. He finished 21st overall at the Mont Ventoux Challenge just a few moments ago. But today, I mean, at the intermediate sprints, he was on fire, wasn't he?
They certainly were. And real interesting tactic, I think, from Canyon Esports, that they didn't go for the earlier sprints to pick up points. They just sat back, waited, let the other teams and riders fight it out amongst themselves. And there was, you know, real big, intense power there. And they just sat back and waited. And at one point we were thinking, well, this is very surprising not to see any points on the board for Canyon at this stage in the race. But then the back end, you just saw how well drilled they were, having 2 riders taking maximum points on several occasions, and between Jones and Viarsin, incredible.
Well, until that final sprint, where it feels a little bit like they came unstuck, and we can actually go to the results now to see whether those tactics for Canyon Esports have paid off, or indeed if they've been rolled on the line. So if we go and take a look.
It almost feels like we need a drum roll, doesn't it? There we are. Oh, they've been pipped.
Oh!
Next Esports PB Insured, presented by Insured, taking it by 7 points from Canyon Esports right at the very last. A big gap between them and Team Sares in 3rd, Movistar E-Team having to settle for 4th. Then it's Beast Mode, BZR Sports Side, World Elite Zwifters, presented by Oral 7. Chaos Esport Racing Team in 8th place after round 1. PO Auto Ceramic Speed in 9th. And in 10th place, as things stand after 1 round of 6, it's Wahoo Lacole.
Wow, my word, that finish sprint was clearly all important there. I mean, the points are weighted heavily, aren't they, towards the finish line? Is it 50 points for the win?
50 points for the win, yes. And then 2nd place is 40 points. So a huge gap there. You want to make sure that you get placing as many riders as possible in that top 30. And that's exactly what Next Esports, powered by Insured, did. They had 3 riders in the top 10. When you look at Canyon, they came into that finish leading by a considerable amount. But when you see where the riders placed at that point, they just weren't in those big numbers. So 50, 40, 35, 30, 27, then it goes all the way down in 1 increments all the way to the 30th place and 1 point for 30th.
Is that a tactic that some of the teams might employ, given that those points are heavily weighted towards what we get at the finish? Like you said, 50 points versus what you get at the intermediate sprints. Is it best sometimes to save a number of your riders to try and get a few in the top 10 at the end of it because there are so many points available?
It is, but it's a huge risk, isn't it? If you want to wait until that finish, you need to make sure that you're going into it with some points on the board, because it's not going to add up and amount to all the intermediate sprints that a team or a rider could potentially do. So a huge risk, I think. If you're picking up a lot of points in the intermediates, you've got a nice buffer. Perhaps you've gone so deep into that red zone, Canyon Esports being the standout ones here, perhaps had used so much energy and sort of so much effort that come the finish, they just didn't have that effort left. Intensity was just too much come the finish.
I don't want to focus too much on them, but I do just want to come back to the Canyon Esports team just for a sec. Matt and Dave in the commentary were talking about how they felt like their tactics, maybe they were saving a couple of their riders who'd been pretty much anonymous at the intermediate sprints. Everything seemed to be done by Jones and Vujasin. But yet they didn't then convert. Do you think it was that inexperience of their new recruits, maybe, that they didn't, or they just didn't have that strength in depth, maybe, to just back up those repeated efforts? Yeah,
perhaps. I mean, Stegerbrucker is a highly experienced Zwifter. Perhaps Aidan Sinclair, one of their new recruits. It's all about coming together, isn't it? And how you're feeling on the night, how things come together, the teamwork. We did see a split at one point, didn't we, where the peloton was completely in half. If you have some of your riders on the wrong side of that split, very, very difficult in Zwift to get back on terms and get back to that front group. So for Vujasin and Jones, it was very much weighted to them if they were on the back foot.
It was very hard out there, wasn't it? We saw a number of splits, and in fact that big group rolling in quite some way behind the winning group on today's race. And we hadn't predicted that before, had we? Because we said because it's reasonably flat and the drafting effect, we should have a big bunch sprint at the end, and it's just whoever is fastest towards the finish. I wasn't expecting that, were you?
Well, I was thinking, we've seen it in the past on some of these flatter courses where the intensity, that natural selection for how the race goes, sheer intensity for these riders. If you see some of the efforts that they're making, upwards of 15 watts per kilogram for these riders, and showing the big power, you're expending a lot here and going really into your reserves. And if you're having to match the efforts, the attacks, you see some dangerous moves, which we did see. Lots of riders and teams try and chip off the front and form a breakaway. If you see a dangerous move, you're wanting to try and bring it back. So you never quite get that recovery period. And if you're into that red zone, you see in the heart rate of upwards of 185 beats per minute, very difficult to recover if you go too far over that limit.
Yeah, let's talk about the physiology, shall we? Because as Dan said a moment ago, the numbers were extraordinary, weren't they? Not only what it takes to get off the front, so we were looking at sort of 7.5 watts per kilo just to maintain a gap, but then at all the intermediate sprints, we're looking at 14, 15 watts per kilo, repeated every, 4 minutes or so?
I saw a 17 held for quite some time towards the end, 17 watts per kilo.
That is remarkable, isn't it? Yeah. Like really impressive stuff.
But being able to make those efforts back to back, being able to recover from them, being able to respond to any attacks from other teams. If one moment you take your foot off the gas and you see a gap open, you've got to make another acceleration, another explosive move just to get yourself back into contention, despite having the power-ups, despite having the draft effect.
Well, it is definitely something I'm going to continue to enjoy to watch. I won't be getting involved in anything close to the Premier Division for a very, very long time, so although I know you love it.
Well, yeah, to be fair, mate, you're in for week 8 of the Northern European Division 2, yeah, category A.
I think I'm on holiday that week, Si.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, right, shall we move on to the women's race? We have got more racing to look forward to coming up. Same course. We should say, actually, that the women's and the men's events will be swapping round, won't they, each week? So this week we had the men's first, next week we've got the women's events first. And there's parity, isn't there, between the men's and the women's races?
There is, all doing the same course, the same distance. distance, the same amount of intermediate sprints, the same points as well. So it's great now the women have seen how it's unfolded for the men. What can they take away from tonight's race? But likewise, next week when the women go first, the men will be able to keep a close eye on what's been going on.
Some hints and tips. Right, well, before we discuss who the favourites are likely to be this time around, let's once again take a look back to Series 3 to see who finished top of the table in the women's races back then.
Line Hino race team 5 strong. Look at that, a blanket finish. What a superb performance by Cannon Esports. Another blanket finish. We're in Watopia, familiar roads, but a course that's never been raced on before. Things are starting to wind up now, and it's the Ionian race team hit the front now. Looks like Godby's coming through, but also MacGyver from Movistar. Rider from I Race Like a Girl is going to overhaul it. Where did she come from? What a ride by Catherine Curry to take the win. 2024. Can they make this their first win in the team time trial? They are absolutely flying. And now it is Hino who are next up.
The speed right now as they thunder down the finish line onto them all. This team are flying. Lethbridge going for the individual victory here.
Alice Lethbridge looks like she's going to take an absolutely scintillating victory here.
Less than 1,000 meters to go now.
Shayna Powers is also right there, and this is going to be Cryojet. I'll be surprised if this isn't a new fast time, Hannah. Hino does it again. As Swedish finishes, Hino was right behind them. That's how you do it.
1,000 meters of racing left of this finale in the ZRL Season 3. Curie, she opens up that gap to Nelson. She has 4 bike lengths, but she's going to take the victory in the finale of the ZRL.
So it was the Hino team who took the win in Season 3 of the ZRL. And in fact, like Canyon Esports and the men's, they are unbeaten. 3-time champions in the first, second and third series. However, there has been some talk they might have lost some of their firepower. Is that true?
It is, and gives the teams this chance now to try and close the gap, and some big signings, big riders that they've lost. Caroline Williams has made that transfer to Canyon Esports, so she's bolstered their squad. Also Louise Huback not racing either, so all a little bit of change for Hino. They're going to have to adapt, aren't they?
Have they drafted anyone in to replace that talent?
They already had such a strong roster of riders previously, so we've still got Vicky Nealon, we've still got Alice Lethbridge, we also have the Swedish rider Cecile Hansen as well. So at the moment they still have some of their core riders within that roster, but it'd be interesting to see how the opening night goes.
Any other surprises that you might think will happen tonight? I mean, I guess if you expect them to happen, they won't be a big surprise. But for those of us new to watching the ZRL, compared to the overall standings last year, we mentioned that Hino have lost a bit of their strength. Has anyone got stronger, or has anyone else lost some riders to other teams as well?
Well, seeing what some of the riders have been doing in between the 2 seasons, out racing IRL in real life, out on the road racing scene, we've got 2 riders here racing tonight, Alice Lethbridge and Becky Story. Lethbridge with Hino, Becky Story with Movistar. They've just come off the back of the Women's Tour, a 6-day stage race in the UK. Los Adagist from Ionian, make sure you watch out for that team because they're going from strength to strength. They have, as I say, Los Adagist and Daniela Estrate, who were incredibly strong last season. And I think they will have come away from last season a lot of confidence, a lot of motivation.
There's a few teams, aren't there, with some interesting backstories as well. I saw Ago Watt there. They're a new team with their rider manager, a completely new cyclist who started riding in lockdown a year ago.
It's incredible, isn't it? And it just shows where you can come from. You have this grassroots, you have the ability to race daily on Zwift and in some of the other races that are available on the platform, and you see how they've been promoted from the community division. They have this really strong squad, and it'll be interesting to see how they get on. Laura Perry is not the only rider as well who started to race during lockdown. We have Kristen Kulczynski of Team 2024, who was a real standout rider over the last few seasons, but also one of their other teammates. We have newly Paige Peters, who also got riding during lockdown. So some riders, they've never raced outdoors, they've only solely raced in esports. So this is the really interesting, exciting thing.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting indeed. Hannah has given such lengthy answers. You've now not got very long to get yourself over to the commentary box to join Matt Stevens in commentary. I honestly cannot wait for this one.
No.
Si. It's going to be brilliant, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. We will find out exactly how the race pans out in just a moment as we hand over to Matt and Hannah. And, well, yeah, as Dan said, I can't wait to see it unfolding.
Yeah. You might have to wait just slightly for Hannah, but Matt's here now.
Thank you very much indeed. I've just about recovered for that little break in between, but welcome to round one of the ZRL, the Zwift Racing League Premier Division. And next up today, after a scintillating men's race, is the women's race. This is week one, and it's the first time we've ever raced on Makuri Islands, and this is the Flatland Loop. 3 laps of around 12.8 Ks, giving us a total distance of 38.8 kilometres, with an elevation gain of a smidge under 300 metres at 298. They are the classic power-ups that we've seen today: the Aero power-up, Draft power-up, and the Featherweight power-up, which of course makes you 10% lighter. But today, that isn't, I think, going to be the key power-up that's going to be used. I think it's Aero and Draft that are going to really matter on this really fast course. There's a couple of sticky, small drags on it, nothing that will bother the riders too much. But what they will do is just sap, slowly but surely, the strength from these riders' legs. This, as we saw in the men's race, is very, very fast indeed. They are up, they are running. We have 13 teams. 2 teams, of course, are newly promoted, as was discussed on the sofa by Hannah, by Simon, and by Dan. And I'm expecting something similar to the men's race. A slightly smaller field here, but an absolutely superb field. I can just hear my colleague Hannah Walker coming on. Hannah, I can just see you. You're looking comfortable, fresh from the sofa. What a race that was from the men's. Let's get stuck into the women's. This is a superb racing circuit, isn't it? I cannot wait to see how the women tackle this one. We've seen over the last 3 seasons, we're in season 4 now, some really aggressive racing. Season by season, it just gets better. What are you expecting from tonight?
Well, I'm firstly excited to see this new course. As we saw in the men's race, it was unpredictable. You look at the profile, how the race is, and you would expect a huge bunch sprint with the majority of riders. Very different to how it went. We had that huge split of riders who lost contact with the front of the peloton, and in the end we had a bunch sprint, but very, very reduced indeed. And I think for me, I think it's that excitement. It's going into that unknown, isn't it, of a course that we've never raced on before in the ZRL, and I think that adds the real excitement, especially with it being in the first round of this new season. Leading the front of this peloton, we have Shayna Paulus, who's just come off racing IRL, doing a lot of the gravel racing with Team 2024. And as we were talking in now on the sofa with Dan and Sly, we have Paige Peters, a rider who has only started cycling very, very recently, done it with esports, a new recruit for that team. So Nicola Cranmer doing a tremendous job of talent spotting, seeing the new up-and-coming riders on Zwift, Matt.
No, definitely. There's some wonderful stories. The thing I love, not just about the esports side of it, this exciting, thrilling, different racing that brings people together from all over the world, from different communities, different time zones, as we talked about. There are people in the people in Northern Europe, up in Denmark, as well, all over the world. I love the fact that
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, isn't it, Matt, that you have riders from different parts of the world, different time zones. Perhaps riders have who are on the same team have never met each other before because of where they are in the globe. Here is our first look at one of the riders, Charlotte Bacchus, here for Team 2024. Just sitting very comfortably in the middle of the peloton at the moment, and got a relatively low cadence. Starts to pick it up now, and this is what it looks like from each rider's pain cave. Of course, everyone with the different setups. It's tremendous to see. You see the big screen as well, where she's seeing the racing, the dual laptops as well, with all the data. With Team 2024, they have an extremely strong roster of riders. Kristen Kulczynski of the USA, a rider who had only raced and ridden indoors on esports. She'd never been outside, so she's been doing a lot of that in between this season and the previous season, getting accustomed to riding outdoors. Also in there, Shayna Paulus, a phenomenal rider, tremendous crit rider as well. Paige Peters, who we've already mentioned, has been doing a lot on Zwift and in esports, come very, very late into the sport and relatively new. And also Naomi de Pennington as well within this squad, the British rider, as we start to make our way through. Taking a look at our next rider from Team Swedish Swifters, Anna Svardstrom. Very, very different styles here. Anna Svardstrom keeping a relatively nice high cadence, just reaching above 90 RPM, where you look at the difference between Charlotte Bacchus, who is more into the mid-70s. The Team Swedish Swifters, again, so experienced within the ZRL. A team headed up by Carl Teslius, a Swedish manager who has managed this team to a second place overall in the team standings last year. So gone from strength to strength. In season 1 of the ZRL, they were 9th. In the second season, they were 10th. And then, as I say, they're going from strength to strength to second place overall. So we'll expect big things from the Team Swedish Swifters this season, I think, with Jessica Edqvist, Anna Embring, Anna Svardstrom, Nelly Larsen, who was incredible in season 3, and Maria Frisk. So as we take a look at Alicia Haag, the German rider from the German team of Beast Mode powered by Rose, Sebastian Wolf has been putting these riders to the test, giving them the knowledge that they need to come and ride this course before they come into the ZRL, to make sure that they know this course. Alicia Haag there, just out of the saddle, getting as much as she can out of herself.
Yep, Hannah, sorry about that. And, oh, I'm back. Thank you very much for holding the fort. And as you said, I wanted to build here on a completely different course. And I think from a tactical perspective, it's going to be very, very important that they get this right. But we're already 5 or so kilometres into this first lap. And we've got the sprint coming up already, Hannah. It's a completely flat one, going to be building it up. You just see it on the left-hand side. The road meanders round to the right and then swings round to the left before it opens up again. And some big double digits that we're seeing at the front here. Kumna from Edqvist, Miller, Kristen Kulczynski also there as well. Looks like Kulczynski's just going to be brought back near the end, but it looks like Frisk from the team at Swedish Zwifters takes that one ahead of the American. Great riding there. And a very, very fast opening sprint. These opening few Ks have gone very, very quickly indeed, but it is Frisk from the team at Swedish Swifters ahead of Addergeest of Team Ionian, then Embring, another Team Swedish Swift up in the mix. Kulczynski, in fact, in 4th. Vicky Whitelaw, the first home of the women in red from Hainaut. Then we have Jackie Godby, Edqvist and Kubner. So some familiar names up in that first sprint of the day there, Hannah.
Yeah, it certainly is. Jackie Godby, a part of the furniture here in ZRL, one of the big powerhouses, and just picking up points for her team of Team Saris. But as you say, Los Addergeest as well, picking up the 8 points there for Ionian, a rider who has had tremendous form of late.
Indeed, well, the team at Swedish Swifters 18 points. Kirkmere with 10, Ionian with 8, and 2024 with 5. Heino, Team Saris and Beast Mode. Now that big acceleration, as we saw in the men's races, has really set the cat amongst the pigeons. There's a lot of riders who have been dropped. A few riders slowly but surely getting on, but already that front group is only 38 riders. We've got a little group, or a big group, should I say, at 5 seconds now as we hit this nasty little drag. I described this little drag. I know we've ridden this course before. We've done a couple of recons for other events on this course. And this little climb is really nasty. You couldn't call it a proper hill, but it's one of a series of little drags, Hannah, which really starts to sap the strength, doesn't it?
And it puts that sting into the legs, doesn't it? Because if you've already had to make a huge intense effort in the intermediate sprint, you're trying to recover, but there's already some movement up towards the front. You can't let these gaps go too big. You can't let the gaps open up, otherwise, as we know in Zwift racing, and if it's your first time watching, it's so difficult to close those gaps. As you see, there is a good indicator of how far back that second group is, starting to lose touch now. You see at the front at the moment the flurry of blue jerseys, the team of Movistar up towards the front with a number of riders. Becky Story, who has just come off the back of the Women's Tour 6-day stage race in the UK, where she's been competing with her road team. Also up towards the front as well is Jackie Godby, already a winner in the ZRL in season 3. So you can see how reduced this group is now, even after the first intermediate sprint. Canyon Esports come towards the front with the pink and purple jersey, who are on the front at the moment. Caroline Williams, the first look that we get of Caroline Williams, the rider who was a transfer from the Heino team, who won all 3 seasons of the ZRL so far. So wanting to go on to pastures new, have a new experience with a new team, and Reese Howell, the team manager of Canyon Esports, making that recruit of Caroline Williams, the British rider. Here is Jackie Godby, one of the most incredible riders in the ZRL. She
I have to say that Jackie Godby is an impact racer without any doubt. I have a feeling that by the time we get to the finale here, we're going to be talking about her quite a bit. I'm seeing Julia Shalau's name coming up. She has ridden the fastest lap in history out here on the Umezi course that we're racing on today, and obviously she's well suited to what we're up against here, Hannah. But right now, it looks like a nice mix of riders up on the front.
It certainly does, doesn't it? And as you were just mentioning, for Junior Shalau of Beast Mode Powered by Rose, both the women's team and men's team went out and have done course recons of the route tonight. I think it's a really interesting move, isn't it, from the team manager to get all of the team come together, make sure you know exactly the course. And just to put into some context, the fastest lap was 16 minutes and 11 seconds, averaging 275 watts on this course, with an average speed of 47.7 kilometers per hour. And you'd have to say that I think that that record will probably be slashed in a race situation,
Yeah.
Dave.
Yeah, I would agree, Hannah, for sure. Julia has been racing with the men quite a bit through our off season, going from season 3 to season 4 in the ZRL, and has been one of the, I would say, most stunning performers that we've seen on the Zwift platform. She is a legend and really hasn't even made her mark yet in the ZRL. You're going to see that black and orange jersey of Beast Mode. They have become a premier squad very quickly. They were in the community, and Nathan Guerra noted that they brought a lot of energy when they showed up, and they haven't backed off at all. They immediately jumped in as one of the top teams. Now, I see Caroline Williams' name. She is one of the biggest transfers that we had, Hannah. I know you've talked about that a little bit already, the fact that she's moved over to this Canyon team. And you know, when you look at Heino's domination, that was an interesting storyline to follow there, as Luis Huback also not with Heino right now, but they still have some resources, and I would not count them out, even though they're sort of maybe stepping back a little bit as far as their ambition. They came in as the queens of esport racing without any doubt. I wouldn't be too surprised if they find a way to rally themselves right back into the top 3 or even remain the best team in the league. So, boy, the usual suspects.
I was just going to say that, Dave, actually, because you have to think if you've won all 3 of the ZRLs so far, and you have the team manager Lars Huspeller at the helm, and he's picking the riders, Dave, and he's selecting the rosters for each races for Heino. Surely he knows what he's doing, and across the board they still have that experience within the team with the Cecilia Hansen, who took 3rd at the Esports World Championships. We have Melanie Maurer, we have Alice Lethbridge, Vicky Whitelaw, Vicky Nealon. You have to think that perhaps, you know, with Heino, they're still going to be one of the strongest teams.
Yeah, I would agree. That experience. Now, they're going to be one of the teams, Hannah, that's disappointed to not see as many team time trials out here. That was one of their real strengths. We're jumping in now with Kristen Kolchinski here. She'll be racing out of Long Island and has become one of the real forces in the world of esports, no doubt about it. She's a legend already, and it sounds like they've got Matt back. Matt, I'll throw it to you. As you can see, Kolchinski up and out of the saddle. So throwing some real watts at the problem right now.
Yeah, Dave, thank you very much for covering there, Dave. It's great to have you back on board, filling a little bit of a hole. But no, you quite rightly said Kolchinski is a powerhouse, very, very new to cycling. In fact, only this year has she started to ride outside. She came to the sport just to get fit. Found out that she was exceptionally strong, and that she, well, as a result, got top 10 in the worlds last year, and she is one of the real names in esports. We've got this next sprint coming up, this little series of bends. You can just see just out of the right-hand corner of the screen the finish line, so this is where it opens up, and it is Team Heino. Mary Wilkinson also coming up in 2nd place, but Cecilia Hansen, Mora, looks like Hansen is going to take that one very, very closely, followed by Ada Geest, I think, but Cecilia Hansen of Team Heino looks like she got maximum points there. And Daniela just rolling through. We'll get confirmation of the 2nd sprint of the evening. Remember, there are 6 sprints in total. 10 points to the winner, down to 8th place. But another very, very good sprint there as the riders get a little bit of a recovery. Now had its first chance to see this sort of hold this descent back to the
Yeah, it's this moment when the riders, the teams, they can have this moment to recover. And if you're starting to lose touch as well, you can get yourself back into contention. You just see towards the back of the peloton there, some gaps are starting to open. If you see now on the left-hand side of your screen, there is the results of the village sprint. We have Cecilia Hansen of Heino taking maximum points. Los Adigis again with another 8 points, so 16 points there for Los Adigis to add to Daniela Estrate's 5 as well. So Ionian putting themselves right into the mix there. We have Maurer and Whitelaw, both riders from Heino. So 3 riders from Heino picking up points in that 2nd intermediate sprint. Steph Clutterbuck as well picking up that sole point for Team Movistar. We take a look at a replay of how that intermediate sprint unfolded. And Dave, just talk us through here, because it was Heino who opened things up.
Yeah, as they will do. They've always raced from the front. As you can see, the points here are going to be critical. The way that we're sorting things out, we're going to go back into this front group. I just saw the name Nadia Gantova showing up. This is a new rider to the Premier League, and to be honest, really, as she came out of the Americas West division of the community, not a lot of eyeballs had watched Nadia racing. She is a collegiate rower up at the University of British Columbia and has a huge engine. And there you go, moving right up to the front. I had a feeling that her impact in the ZRL was going to be massive. And right now, it is on like Donkey Kong at the front. I see that Monali Keller was a rider on that Aeonian team. That was another big shift in the power of the women's racing. But here we go, the heads of state, Hannah, moving up to the front. I don't think this is going to be all that similar to the men's race. Tell you the truth, I'm expecting to see Movistar and Beth McKeever making some kind of a split out here.
Certainly are, along with Steph Clutterbuck, who is in this group, currently leading things at the front with that light blue jersey. And Movistar, as we spoke on the sofa with Dan and Sai, that they're the only World Tour team who also have an esports team.
Yeah, and I think that's incredibly cool. I have a feeling, Hannah, we're going to see a lot more of that. I loved your interview with Ashley Moolman-Pasio on The World of Zwift, talking about her involvement, and we're actually seeing that team coming to life right now. This is rugged, no doubt about it. You notice it's not one big blob moving down the road. There's going to be little splits opening up throughout this group. That's going to be the Toyota Cryo team in the white and blue right in the middle there, but the team in blue on the front next to Canyon there is going to be Movistar, and the entire team looks like they found the front of the bike race here, Hannah. So we're getting down to brass tacks. Again, these sprints are critical, and Aeonian, you want to talk about a team that has come really rises to the occasion is a great way to put it. This is a group of women. There's hundreds of women that fly the Aeonian colors, and in their hierarchy now, their premier team, I mentioned adding Monali Keller, they've made some big steps forward, and they now become one of the 5 most powerful esports teams in the world. This is going to be the Swedish rider, Melanie Maurer. She's a marathoner. Actually, Hannah, she just got done running a marathon a couple of weeks ago. I believe the Berlin Marathon just took place. So she's a real talented multi-sport athlete.
She certainly is, and it's incredible how these riders are combining different sports, and we see one of the first lulls in the race. Matt, as a former rider, how do you recover from such an intense? Of course, you still ride, but as a former racer as well, how do you recover? How does the body recover from such intensities at the intermediate sprints?
Spoken to quite a few of these Zwift riders to kind of dissect the physiology needed or to train yourself to an event like this, and almost to a woman and to a man, the top tip was to train your peak 1 minute power. Just repeated 1 minute intervals is apparently the key to success. I asked a lot of riders what their key, if you could only do one thing in training to get ready for Zwift races, it'd be to increase your peak power for 1 minute. And I've only done a couple of little races on Zwift, kind of low level ones, a few of the sportifs, and a bit of a team time trial, and that really did help, even in my kind of relatively old age now. But yeah, intervals, high-end intervals, short, intense, high-end training is what you need, because you need, as you just correctly pointed out, you need to be able to recover from those efforts, drop down into threshold again. Another sort of training that I know these riders do are over-under sessions. So basically riding over threshold, then just underneath threshold and back over again. The kind of training we see team pursuitists do typically to recover on the wheel, then get back on the front again. There's no easy shortcut to being able to ride at this level. But what I love is this real community feel. And there's another rider. Somebody contacted me the other day, and Dan Lloyd will be listening, a lady called Alice Lethbridge, who now rides for Hino Racing, an exceptionally accomplished rider. 7 years ago, me and Dan met her, and she was just starting riding her bike, and she said, how do I get better at riding a bike? Weirdly, me and Dan gave her some advice that has seen her get some success. So who knows? I don't know. I'm not saying that me and Dan are coaches, but I love the community element of this league. Obviously, it's elite, but the fact that anybody can race, join one of these races, and potentially, if they get good enough, can ride at this level is wonderful. It's a real celebration.
It certainly is. It certainly is. And with Lethbridge, she's a really accomplished time trialist here in the UK. I mentioned to Dave before that she's just come off the back of a UCI Women's World Tour stage race for 6 days. Only 1 day rest, Dave, between these 2 races, from completing the stage race on Saturday, yesterday a day off, today straight back into it for the ZRL.
Well, one of the things that I love hearing that story, Matt, is that Alice Lethbridge has taken that knowledge that you passed on to her and is now working with a lot of junior riders on Zwift. She's been developing a team called Socks for Watts that races in the WTRL team time trials that take place on Thursday. Alice Lethbridge is an amazing woman. And Hannah, as you say, she finishes up the women's tour in Britain and immediately jumping in here to the deep end of the pool with a very, very high level. That's going to be Paige Peters that we're looking at, another one of the new riders on that 2024 team. They have such an interesting collection of women that make up that squad, including Shayna Paulus. Shayna, her brother, just finishing top 5 at the World Championships, winning Classico San Sebastian, and they both are of the Oneida tribe. They're Native Americans, and right now we're really trying to honor that here in North America, the indigenous people, and Shayna does a tremendous job of telling that story. And I see we're in camera now with Harriet Gilson.
Just take a look at the effort needed, Matt, for this point in the race. We're not into an intermediate sprint, but this is what it takes. A relatively low cadence, a lot of torque as we go into this next sprint, Matt.
Yep, Adigis on the front, the Ionian race team at the moment. Vaharan is there as well for Ionian. So Ionian bossing the front. And it looks like it's Paulus, the aforementioned Shayna Paulus. Very, very solid around that looked like she might have gone that one. Adigis took the win in the end, though. 1-2 for the Ionian race team. Shayna Paulus in third. Scary Mary Wilkinson from Canyon in fourth. Vicky Whitelaw from Hynau in front of Mora and Hansen from her team too. And then Cecilia Williams from Canyon rounding out the top 10. So there's several teams now that are really emerging that are battling it out for these points, because I can confirm that this front group, as we look at the running total, should I say, Ionian lead now with 39, Hynau with 30, Team Swedish Zwift is with 18, 2024, Kirkmare, Canyon, Saris, Beast Mode, and then Movistar with just 1 point. But in this front group now, there are only, I think a couple more have been tailed off. Yes, they have. There's only 28 riders in this front group now, so a very, very attritional race on a course just on paper, Hannah, that you wouldn't think would be so disruptive, but it's this constant high pace, the relatively low amount of time in between the sprints, which is making this very, very difficult as we see an attack off the front.
When you look at the name of the course on Flatland Loop, you expect it to be completely flat, don't you? But it doesn't tell the full story. 298 meters of elevation, and with these lumps and bumps, and with the intensity and the sheer speed of the race so far, it's putting a lot of riders into difficulty. Shallow, who from Beast Mode, powered by Rose, just clipping off the front there with a modest gap at the moment. But yeah, as I say, this course, with its nature and the nuances of Zwift and of the race, making it very, very difficult, and we've lost a considerable amount of riders so far just from how fast and active it's been.
We're looking at Shallow picture in picture there. It's slightly, maybe we're not seeing her face because of the pain writ large upon it, but I do believe we're going to see a quick slow motion replay of that intermediate sprint, the all-important sprint. So we're not going to get a sprint, actually. We've got PIP of Julia Shallow just in that front group, constantly getting whittled down. But I think we talk about, Dave, don't we, these 1 minute efforts that riders train and to get their peak power. But basically, if you kind of smoothed out the effort, it is like riding one of these races 40, 50 minutes, 45 minutes at or near threshold. So it's very much like a time trial with a set of sprints embedded in it. So quite often riders just cannot maintain the watts per kilo needed to stay in the bunch as well.
Yeah, nothing sounds like more fun than doing a time trial with intervals mixed into the middle of it. That's for sure. As we take a look at, I completely agree with you both on that. And one of the riders that comes to mind is Kristen Kolchinsky. She is phenomenal at these big, sustained efforts. And Hannah, you use that term there or thereabouts, and I love it because she is there or thereabouts every race she does, and what she needs is that 1 minute power, Matt, that you're talking about, and I know that these riders are working really, really hard at that. You're seeing right now a lot of blue up here on the front, and no one is able to completely control this race. My biggest concern, guys, would be Julia Shalhoub, to tell you the truth. If she goes up the road and maybe throw a Jackie Godby into the mix, or to be honest, I don't think that these women are very familiar with Nadia Gantova, and Nadia Gantova would be the most dangerous rider in my mind in this race. She comes in as a big question mark. Well, it's going to be an exclamation point when this one is done and dusted. Boy, there's a few riders. If you could get some cross-team pollination in a breakaway, I would say Shalau, certainly Godby and Gantova. They could do something special out here if they want to combine forces. But again, that's a big ask, isn't it?
That certainly is. Well, Kuczynski there. We're focusing a lot on Kuczynski. We've got that great picture-in-picture, 4.4 watts a kilo, just to stay in this group. But she loves, the harder, the better the race. The more difficult, the smaller the group, that's when Christine Kuczynski comes into her own. But outside of the sport as well, she's a professional as well. She designs her own kind of jewelry. Out of all the characters, I think that race at esports level on Zwift, she's one of the more colourful ones, isn't she? She's kind of very, very interesting. And it's I do love the way that she's kind of super honest about what she does. And also, when you look back at to the first ever esports world championships, when you consider that she's very, very new to the sport, to finish inside the top 10 wearing the Stars and Stripes of the American national team, that was one of the proudest moments of her life, according to her.
Well, and, you know, I think there's some great examples. You know, these women, we're talking about Kuczynski, and you're right, you know, Paige Peters on this team comes from a sled dog racing background, like the Iditarod. I'm not sure how big that is worldwide, but it's certainly a fascinating event. And I mean, to think that she's come to cycling from something like that is mind-blowing. That's going to be now Movistar. Now, we've talked about Beth McGeever quite a bit, but I think Steph Clutterbuck has come up a level, to tell you the truth, Hannah. Clutterbuck looks like she's going to be a big player this season.
And a rider who has been doing a lot of triathlons in the off season of ZRL. She's been doing a lot of hill climbs, time trials as well. So really interesting to see that when we say off season, these riders aren't just putting the bike away in the garage and not seeing it for the last few months. They've still been working hard, training hard all the way through to this season of the ZRL. And for Clutterbuck and for the whole Movistar team, actually, Dave, I think they came into season 3. It was the first time of all 5 riders being together, and I think they learned so much, and you saw that week in, week out. And I think with Movistar into this season, just seeing how they're racing, I mean, I'm incredibly impressed with Imogen Cotter of Movistar. The way she's performed, the way that she's improved as well. She's learned from some of her mistakes from the previous season, and coming into here, they look so dominant, having 3 riders already in this front group of 28. It's there's not every team has multiple numbers or multiple numbers of riders in this group. So Movistar, Dave, in a very strong position.
They certainly are.
Ceres looking strong as well. This is a big day for them, Matt. I'll throw it to you because we're starting to identify the teams, and this is a team sport. It's not about the first rider. I mean, obviously being the first rider over the line matters. That's going to pick up 50 points for you, 40 for second, 35 for third. But in all honesty, you can right now take some inventory, Matt, in this front group, and teams that have 3 or 4 riders are clearly in a dominant position right now.
No, definitely. And Imogen Cotter from Ireland is one of those. They've got although they're a Spanish esports team, they've got a real international heart as well. Riders from across the globe in that squad. But Cotter looking good. A moment ago, we saw the whole of the Movistar team, or the 3 riders from the squad in this front group, riding through and off on the front, trying to make this pace as hard as possible. We've got another rider dropped from this group. We're coming up to the sprint very, very shortly indeed. Clutterbuck on the front, Cotter, Vicky Whitelaw, all the big names. Caroline Williams is there, Mitchell, Peters, Embring, Cécile Lejeune, the French woman, another rider from Canyon in this group. Canyon well represented, as you would expect. Cryo RDT moving up as well. This sprint is coming up very, very shortly indeed. They're jostling for positions. Expect those power-ups to be dropped just as we pass through the cherry blossoms on the right-hand side here. Lejeune now moves through to the front. Gilson, Mitchell, Gontova, Kuczynski. Remember, this it comes very, very late indeed. We've got another left just coming up now. Then it's only 50 meters before the next right-hand turn. You can just see the top of your screen there. Great shot there of Cecilia Hansen, 10 watts a kilo. Shalau Gamps, she's gone very, very long, but she's opened up a little bit of a gap. Can she hold on to the line? Think she's just going to get rolled on the line. Well, a blanket finish there. Let's get confirmation of who took that one. but she went long, and I don't think she got it in the end. Let's have a little look. No, it's the Geese that took it from Daniela of the Onion race team. They are having an amazing night. Then Whitelaw Hansen of Hino, Clutterbuck from Movistar, then the 2024 pairing of Kuczynski Peters and Mary Wilkinson, 8th place.
Daniela Estrata is the Romanian rider who joined the Aonian team and took them to another level last year. As you can see, Aonian is having the best race in their team's history right now. 57 points on top of the table. Although, you know, the rumors or talk about Hino, they have not slipped that much. And clearly you can see that Hansen has been a force out here. So that legend is not over, that's for sure.
Oh, this is the replay coming, and you can just see the real colour blocking, real organised sprint that was. And in the end, as we said, Aonian taking first and second from this reduced group. Communication absolutely crucial here. You cannot have a scattergun approach, Hannah. I mean, we talked about tactics a little bit in the men's race, the importance of communication on Discord, but now with a reduced number of resorts out in front, with some teams with 2, some teams with 3, it's all about communicating as we now head into the latter part, the last half of the race now, Hannah. So talk us through the types of things that you think will be being said between the riders and also between their DSs who are often on these calls as well.
Yeah, you'll have the teams as we do in IRL, in real life, in the UCI races, when you have your sports director and all riders with the race radio, with the earpiece in, and having that method of communication to talk to your teammates, to your sports director. This is very much the same as we go into the final lap. They'll hear that bell. All these teams will be using a communication method, whether that be on Discord or another communication method, to make sure that you're talking about the tactics, how far to go until the next sprint. You know, who has strength in numbers in that front group as well. And I think it's so important to make sure that you are communicating. And one thing that is standing out to me, Matt, is that Ionian, they only come to the front when it's a sprint or when we're going into the lead into a sprint. Any other time, they're sitting in the peloton, making the most of that draft effect. They're saving energy, just following the other teams. Whereas we see in the meantime, you have Movistar, you have Toyota Cryo RDT, Canyon, even Hino coming up towards the front now, who are sort of taking the brunt of the air on the riders and not saving as much energy as Ionian are, and as a consequence they have that strength come the intermediate sprints, Matt.
It's really important that you ride smart. I mean, it's great entertainment to see teams riding aggressively. That's what we like to see as fans. But if you want to win these races, you need to be not only super fit, not only good at communication, as we look at Amelia Mitchell working very, very hard, well over 4.4 watts a kilo, just midway through this group. But if you want to win, you've got to be smart. And quite often, Dave, we see the riders, not always, but quite often, the rider who's put out the least amount of power, in a race on average, so the least amount of watts per kilo actually winning, because they're actually using up their energy in a completely different way. So, as Hannah said, sitting back, watching, waiting, talking and striking at the right moment, using power-ups as well at the right time if you get the ones you want. That's what it's all about, Dave, isn't it?
It really is, Matt. I mean, right now, I'll tell you one team that knows how to communicate, and that's Hino. Is look at them right now, perfectly positioned. That's what I would call the sweet spot. They're not on the front, but they're near the front. They're ready to cover any attacks, and I get the feeling, Hannah, that attacking out of this group might become a fool's errand pretty quickly. There's a lot of riders that look like they're hungry for a sprint today. That's no surprise as we open up the account here in Season 4, or actually, let's call it Season 1 of 21-22. This is going to be a Donnybrook.
It certainly is, and with teams having several riders in here who can sprint as well, it's very different sprinting on your smart turbo in esports in the ZRL than it is IRL as well. And so some riders, they're able to produce really high power and able to maintain it for a long period of time. as we know, if it's been a very intense, aggressive, active race, whether you are an out-and-out sprinter or not, if you're already into that red zone and you're unable to recover, you just don't have the legs to respond.
Hey, listen, both of you, Matt and Hannah, have raced at the highest level. I don't know that you can go deeper in an in-real-life bike race than you do with esports, because you would just pass out and fall off your bike. A lot of these riders are literally at that limit. I mean, tunnel vision, blacking out in the sprint, it's not impossible. They go that deep, don't they?
Yes, I don't think it's a point we've ever kind of raised before. Yeah, both Hannah and I have gone pretty deep in bike races in our previous past. But Dave, you're quite right. You don't have to worry about kind of the dangers of crashing. You could actually race closing your eyes, and you couldn't do that in a normal sprint. So by blanking out all of the other factors that often contribute to the effort you're able to put out, the way you have to think, this is still a very skillful sport, but in a very, very different way. You can block all those extraneous environmental factors out and concentrate on one thing, and that is putting yourself deep into that hurt locker. And we quite often see riders, without going into too much graphic detail, past this lovely pumpkin patch, which is very timely with Halloween just round the corner, is riders actually throwing up afterwards because they go so deep. But it's a tough sport. It's a beautiful sport. It's a growing sport. And we've only got 27 riders in the front group. 2 have been dropped. Maria Marb of Beast Mode, Leah Swan of the Ionian are the 2 riders in between. And the bunch are out of it now at 2 minutes and 56. So only 27 riders left in the field now. Hannah.
Yeah, just taking a look at how intense the racing is, and when you compare Nadia Gontova's heart rate at the moment, 96 beats per minute as we are currently at. When you looked at Natalie Stevenson, the rider from Glasgow racing for the cryo team, you saw her heart rate 177 beats per minute. So very different for these riders. Where are they able to sort of soft tap, soft pedal, recover from those efforts? And Gontova doing an incredible job of being under 100 beats per minute.
I had a chance, Hannah, to talk with Nadia Gontova at her home. She lives in Seattle, and she is Canadian. It's actually an interesting, she's Russian by ethnicity, Canadian by nationality, and has a home in America, but she goes to school up in British Columbia. And I would say that, again, huge amount of unknown around Nadia Gontova. She is a beast, a wattage cottage to say the least. And I don't know that, we're talking about the ability to suffer and dig deep. Does anyone dig deeper than rowers? I don't think so. Our esports world champion came from that sport and now has actually moved into our sport because it's even more exciting than rowing, I like to think. But either
It certainly is, Dave. It certainly is. But we're already into our next sprint, the country sprint, with 8 kilometers remaining. 40 minutes of racing under the belt for these riders. Paige Peters, the newly assigned rider for Team 2024, opening things up with that half a second gap. But here is the movement from Ionian, from Adigist, just taking it there, I think, from on the line. Los Adigis, the rider who has been in form of recent weeks, taking victories out on the road, a victory out in Ireland. There we go. There are those results. Los Adigis takes maximum points again in that country sprint. Paige Peters with the 8. Verhaeren taking the 6. Scary Mary Wilkinson taking 5 to add to Canyon Esports' total. Maura with the 4, Paulus taking the 3, Gontova, who we were just speaking about, taking the 2, and again Clutterbuck from Movistar picking up the sole point to add to their overall tally. So it'll be interesting now to see the overall tallies for the teams as we go into a replay. Here on the left hand side is those overall points, and look at Ionian race team almost walking away with it, or should we say riding away with it, Dave?
Yeah, I don't know that anybody was anticipating this kind of a command performance from Aonian here. This is absolutely breakthrough ride today. We're going to take a look at a replay now of that previous sprint, and Aonian is putting riders up in the top 5 over and over again. As you said, Hannah, they are riding away with it. Look at how they timed this sprint. They've been doing their homework. Aonian deserves a tremendous amount of credit for, we talk about leveling up. They've doubled up. their levels here. Gone from a solid mid-pack team as they came from the community. They were immediately successful, but this is out of this world what they're doing today.
It certainly is, and to be able to time it so well, Matt, coming over at the last moment to Paige Peters there, it's incredible, isn't it?
It certainly is, but you're wondering whether that's caused this reaction from Hino, because they are the team to beat. But I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this in the early points classification. We've still got another couple of sprints to go on this. Well, one more sprint to go on the final lap. That comes in about 4K's time. Remember, with about 2 and a little bit to go. But Schalau, the German rider, is now off the front. Good attack by the Beast Mode powered by Rose Rider. But what are Hino going to do? But what we do know is that Hino, all importantly, have 4 riders in that front group. They've got Melanie Walker, Celia Hansen, Vicky Whitelaw and Vicky Nealon, all in that front group. So they've got the numbers, but have they got the capacity to actually score enough points to win this one? This is going to be a real nail-biter. I didn't expect this one. The question was posed by the guys on the sofa to you, wasn't it, Hannah? What are the team to beat Hino? Perhaps, Dave, we are getting the first insight into a team that can genuinely challenge the might, the dominance of the women in red.
This is the first time that we really have seen that, Matt. I think a lot of folks who've been following the ZRL are going to be excited. Movistar has also stepped up. There's no doubt about it. But at this point now, if Aeonian can win this opening race of the 6-race season, Hannah, in my mind, this would instill more confidence in them than we have seen so far in the history of the league. This would be the biggest step forward. What are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree. And with the different races that we have in this season's ZRL with only the one team time trial, that's where Hino were so dominant, and you always knew that they would be able to, the majority of times, win by a considerable amount. And with Ionian, they've gone away in that off-season period. We already saw that Los Adigis was a real promise in last season. We think back to New York and the way that she raced in one of the rounds there, and she was totally dominant in some of the intermediate sprints. So I think, you know, both you and Matt are right, seeing this transition, seeing this change, that the gap is closing to Hino, and a team has, we spoke about it in previous seasons, who is going to crack the code. Looking at the intermediate sprints and how things are going now, Ionian have got it nailed on.
That they certainly have. They are looking very, very good. But we know the experience of Hino. We saw that tentative little, was it really an attack from Celia Hansen? Not too sure. She didn't certainly press her advantage home. I think everybody now is gilding themselves for the last sprint before the finale, that little sprint before that nasty little drop-off. We saw a few riders getting detached again. So this group has now whittled itself down even further. 2 riders from the Toyota Cryo RDT team, Louise Gamps and Amelia Mitchell, have now been dropped from the front group, meaning there's only 25 riders left in this front group, including 4 from Team Hino. And of course, we've seen how well the Ionian race team have done. But Hannah, how do you tackle this sprint? We've seen it. Oh, these are the 2 riders just in the middle, both of the Toyota Cryo riders. But importantly, they need to keep on riding, because there are still points on offer for the top 30 riders, though. They need to keep pressing home, not their advantage. They just don't want to get caught by the bunch now. They should be safe, though. They have 2 minutes in hand, Hannah.
Yeah, totally right, Matt. That they are still within those points. They still want to be able to add that to their team's tally. At the moment, you know, as a team, if you've got strength in numbers for this finale, you want to make sure at this point you're already communicating, you're already talking to each other. How are you going to tackle this sprint? Not to go too early, that you end up running out of legs, out of speed. If you take it up too early, we've seen riders being able to overhaul, and you have that draft effect going into that sprint. But also seeing the way that the men's race played out, with Canyon Esports having such a buffer in the points from picking up points in the intermediates. It's not all done and all over for Ionian race team. There's still an opportunity for another team to come back, and Hino is a prime example of that, with 4 riders in this group of 25. If they can score highly and overhaul the points classification at the moment, when you look at the big points on offer at the finish, 50 for first place, 40 for second, 35 for third, 30 for fourth, 27th for 5th, and then from 25 points all the way down, there's huge jumps there and an option for a team to close the gap.
Hannah, you really see that you need to be close to the top to have a chance, but you can make a big jump. You make a great example there with 50 for the win. There's so many points in the top 5. It does start to tighten up as you work from 10th down to 30th place, but there are some massive point jumps up there on top of the table. And a team like Hino right now, with their experience, is not in bad shape. I mean, I'm certainly looking at Jackie Godby, the American on Team Ceres, as one of the most dangerous riders in this group. But Jackie needs some help on her on that Ceres team to be able to pick up enough points to win in the team event. And that's how we race in the ZRL. One individual will never be enough. I must say that right now, Caroline Williams, who moved over to the Canyon team, she looks like she's riding on a mission out here today as well. But her former teammates there are, you mentioned it, it looks really, really good up there for Hino right now.
Well, we've got the final sprint coming up now. Looking at Lewis Adigis, who's been riding very, very well. A reminder of the composition before we hit that sprint. 4 from Hino in the front, 3 from Ionian in the front group, 4 from Canyon in at the front, 3 from Movistar. Amongst a few other individual riders, there's 3 from Team 2024. So all of the key teams that you'd look at as favourites have got numbers in this front group. But the big question is, what's going to happen on this next opportunity to score some points? But even more importantly than that, how can these riders recover? With only 2 kilometres to go, we've got around 500 metres till this next sprint. Shallow starting to ride things up at the front. Clutterbuck, this is this little nasty chicane. 1 more left and then 1 right. Shallow has actually gone clear from Beast Mode powered by Rhodes, opened up a gap of 2.3 seconds. Could this not just be a battle for the points? Could she try and go clear? But she's been flanked and followed by Daniela Estrati. Estrati looking good here for second place. Shallow takes the points. Estrati second. Gontova in third place for Insured, powered by Pedal Power. But 2 kilometres to go now. This is absolutely fascinating stuff. Dave, 2 to go. There's a 3.5 minute gap next to the next big group on the road. So lots to talk about at the finish. 1,900 meters to go now.
Are they saving themselves for the finish? That's the question now, because this is going to be a real rush to the line. We're down to it. This is the business end. Inside of 1.7K to go. Hannah, Aeonian has done so much good work up to this point. They've got to be fighting to get a couple riders. If they can get 1 into the top 5, another rider into the top 10, that might be enough. There's just, oh man, they're going to be scrapping for points. A battle royale as we come up quickly on 1K to go, Hannah.
It certainly is, and also going into this finish, interestingly, that Los Adigis didn't go for that intermediate sprint there. Only Daniela Estrate of her team went for it, so perhaps they're saving something back. And the all-important question is, Matt, which power-up have these riders, have these teams got? 3 power-ups available: the Aero, the Draft, the Feather. And I certainly know as you go under the Flamme Rouge with 1,000 meters to go, which power-up I'd want. It'd be the Aero for this finish, Matt.
It certainly will. Kuczynski is moving to the front now. Vicky Nealon also. Shayna Palos not too far away. We see they're moving to the right now. This is the last few hundred meters now. There is the finish line opening up. Becky Story is on the front for Movistar at the moment. Jackie Godby also there, dropping down now. Peters, Wilkinson, Gilson, a couple of riders have just gone off the front there. Jackie Godby of Team Saris is joined by Becky Story of Movistar. 300 meters to go now. 25 riders left in this front group. What a race it's been. Shallow goes, but Adigis from the Netherlands and Ionian race team is clear. 12.2 watts a kilo. She is dropping a bomb and she takes it clear from the rest. Adigis takes the win for Ionian. Looks like Ionian got second place as well. What a ride by Adigis. Ariel Verhaeren from America looked to be in second place. A 1-2 for the Ionian race team. What a finish to a scintillating race. They have ripped up the form book. They are the new dominant team, Dave.
Aeonian is in the house. Hannah, that was a breakthrough ride here to open up the season. Wow.
That was an absolute masterclass. Incredible performance there from Los Adigis. as well as her whole team, Daniela Estrate as well. That was absolutely scintillating, the way that they raced into that finish. They were patient, they waited. That was time to perfection. It was incredible stuff there, Matt.
Really, really was. I mean, well, again, I think I'm going to need to just sit back, get my breath for a moment. That was absolutely amazing. So Lewis Adegeist takes the win. We'll get confirmation of the top 10, but what an evening's racing by Ionian Racing Team. The dominance, the previous dominance of Hino will have changed, no doubt about it, with that victory. Top 2. So Lewis Adegeist takes her first win at this level for the Ionian Race Team. Second place, the teammate from America, Ariel Verhaaren. Then we have Mary Wilkinson, Scary Mary, the first home for Canyon Esports in third. Shayna Paulus is fourth for 2024. Then the first of the Hino girls is home in fifth. That's Vicky Whitelaw. Jackie Godby in sixth there for Saris. Julia Schau in seventh place. Well, absolutely breathless stuff. So much to talk about. Let's have a little look at that action replay one more time. I don't think I can get enough of this. This really was amazing. It was Julia Schau, who ended up seventh, who took it up very, very early on. Then with 200 meters to go, this is when the Dutch woman, without a power up, in fact, not too sure she dropped one off earlier on, but she went clear by several lengths. It looks as if she's actually got a solo breakaway there. I know Dave's still with me, Dave, but absolutely amazing evening's racing. But to have a 1-2 off the dominant riding earlier on in the points, this is something new, isn't it? This is another level that is making this Zwift Premier League so exciting.
Matt, they say you reap what you sow, and Aeonian has been doing a tremendous amount of work building that franchise, building the camaraderie amongst the women who race on that team. So they're not just a Premier League team. There are hundreds of women who are part of the Aeonian program now, and this for them is the benchmark performance. And really, I think that we can say we're moving into a whole new era with esports racing. Aeonian comes out of the community. They do this organically. And now today, they are the #1 esports team in the world. That was a phenomenal ride. Got to give credit. Hino fighting back, Matt.
Well, Dave, thanks for filling in for my absence a few times there. Again, thanks again for Hannah. That was superb. Importantly as well, what a location to race on. I do love the Makuri Islands, especially the Flatland Loop. It's provided us with some thrilling, some exciting racing and so much to talk about on the sofa. I'm going to go for a lie down, chaps, and of course, Hannah, but back over to you.
You're right, Matt. That has given us a lot to talk about on the sofa. That was quite the performance from the Ionian Race Team today. We should list some names. They consisted of Lewis Adegeist, who performed so well and took the win on the line. Lily Swan, Daniela Estrate, Ariel Verhaaren and Sabrina Cotil. Very impressive indeed.
It was, wasn't it? 8th overall last year, but they've got themselves off to the best possible start by taking, we imagine, the full 20 points here in round 1 of the ZRL, although that does need to be confirmed, doesn't it?
Well, it does need to be confirmed, but I don't think there's much doubt, considering they were leading it up to the final there, and then took 1-2 on the line, Hannah. A big upset today.
A huge upset, but boy, I mean, we said, didn't we, that coming into this new world, we'd never raced a round of the ZRL in it, and it could throw up some surprises, and it certainly did. I think getting off to a fantastic start, it shows where we're at coming into this new season. Despite Hino losing a few of their big named riders, they're still very much within the mix. But for Ionian Race Team and the way they raced today, phenomenal. I mean, I'm quite speechless, and we know that Lewis Adegeist is in tremendous form from racing out on the road over the last few weeks, seeing her take and pick up victories. But that was a real masterclass there.
It was, wasn't it? Now, we'll come back to what this specific course means for the ZRL moving forwards and whether or not it is just specific to this one. But for now, we've got the top 10 we can check out. So the official results. Here you go, Ionian Race Team. You were right, Dan. Your hunch was proven correct. 193 points ahead with Hino Racing Team, a distant second. Although, actually, we've got to say that the final results are not going to they're not going to reflect that. There's only going to be 1 point difference, isn't there, in the overall? But still, Canyon Esports in third, 107 points. 2024, 104 points in 4th. Movistar E-Team rounding out the top 5. Very distant, actually, you've got to say, with 47 points there. But that's a thumping, isn't it? How do you think Heino are going to come back from this one, having been so soundly beaten?
Well, I think that you have a week now, don't you, to first of all recover from tonight's efforts, which they were immense. The first one is always difficult, isn't it? You know, blowing out the cobwebs. But I think for Heino, I think they'll be quietly pleased, to be honest, seeing that result. Having, as we said, having lost Louise Huback, having lost Caroline Williams, I think Lars Hushbell, the team manager, will be very delighted. And as you said, it's only 1 point that they've lost out. It's 20 points for the first team, 19 for second. So still very much within the mix. But, you know, 1 week to turn things around.
A week to turn things around, a week to bring in some key transfers, maybe, ahead of round 2. But it is a point worth really hammering home, I guess, the fact that it doesn't matter how dominant your performance is. If you win a race and the next team comes second, even if you've got double the point, you still only take a 20-point versus 19-point advantage into round 2. So it really is all about being very consistent over the entire 6 rounds, not having 1 week where you win, 1 week where you come 10th place. The teams that have won this over the first 3 seasons of the ZRL are those that are always in the top 3 or 4. And
being able to perform week in, week out, keeping that consistency is really important, and making sure that you are changing the riders in your roster who are designated within your team of 10, depending on which course is on that evening, and making sure that you're playing to your riders' strengths. If you're really a pure out-and-out climber, you want to make sure that they come into the races with a lot of elevation, a lot of climbing, and specifically get them to target that race. So there's so many different factors coming in, but consistency, the main one.
Before we drill down into what's coming up and those different courses, because there are some climbers courses, aren't they, on the horizon, should we just check in with some of the key moments from that race? We've got the sprints and we've also got the finish to check out as well. So perhaps you could just talk us through, from your expert opinion, Hannah, what made the difference? This, I believe, is this one of the intermediate sprints?
Yeah, this is one of the intermediate sprints. It's Paige Peters of Team 2024. She goes very early, and it's only at the last moment, only the last around 10 metres, where Los Adeguist and Daniela Estrate are able to overhaul the rider from Team 2024. So all about that timing, that perfection. You can have as big a gap as you want going into a sprint, but ultimately you have to be the first over the line to pick up those points. This was the moment that Julia Shalau of Beast Mode Power by Rose had that gap going into the final intermediate sprint of the day, but she also it played as a platform, a springboard for Los Adeguist to jump from and have that carrot in front of you to chase down. And it was a long old sprint. She went early, she sensed that danger, and when she went through that 300 metres to go mark, she did have a considerable lead. You can see from this wonderful helicopter shot already having around 3 or 4 bike lengths to the nearest rider, and it was her teammate in Daniela Estrate.
It was, yeah. I think one of you said it in commentary, but that was less of a sprint and more of a lone attack towards the end. I mean, there was clear daylight, wasn't there, between Los Adeguist and the riders behind her. And worth pointing out, as you mentioned before, that she's combining the e-racing with riding professionally on the road. In fact, she was second just 6 days ago at Banche-Chemay-Banche, which is a decent level race over in Belgium. And that's quite the interesting thing about the e-racing, isn't it, in that there are riders that specialise only in this, and they seem to be very good at this, and sometimes don't perform quite as well in real road racing out on the roads. Conversely, there are riders that seem to be able to be very good at both.
There certainly are, and I think having that, and you know, Dave and I and Matt mentioned it in the commentary as well, that a rider who is able to combine the different sports and not going into the off season and having an actual off season between the 2 seasons of ZRL, but you're still working hard, you're still training, you're still racing, doing different things. And for Los Adeguist racing in the Ross as well, winning a stage there, it's really impressive to see how that transpires to the ZRL.
Right, we've got some more results for you now as well. I believe we've got the top 30 riders to check out, which is going to be really interesting because there was another split, wasn't there? Just like in the men's race, we saw a big split. So yeah, a small group of riders contesting the finish, really. Any surprises here, Hannah, for you? Or are these names that you would expect to see up front?
These names, especially within the top 10, are names that we are used to seeing in the ZRL. Likewise for the top 20. For me, Imogen Cotter has come on leaps and bounds since the previous season, and seeing how much she's been learning in that period, working with the Movistar team, with Juan Pablo Molinero, the team manager, and working on the places where she can improve. And I think that tonight's race was a testament to that. And when we look down to the top 30, still Ionian getting another rider there in 29th.
And here's how the teams stand after one round of 6. Mighty lead in terms of points on the day, but I'll remind you, Ionian will take 20 points away from this. Heiner will be on 19, Canyon 18, and 1 point between all of them. 2024 in 4th, Movistar E-Team in 5th, and so on until we get to Onshore, presented by Pedal Power, who rounded out the top 10. So a lot still to play for, of course, with minimal points between all of them. And I think Si and I would like to point out one of the riders that finished in the top 30 there, Amelia Mitchell, because she used to work for us here at GCN and has now gone to bigger and much better things.
Yeah,
fantastic performance, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were delighted to see Amelia up there. So well done, Amelia. Now, should we look ahead to the future weeks? Hannah, you touched a moment ago on the different courses that are coming up, and these teams are going to need strength and depth because this one is very much a flat-ish race with a lot of intermediate sprint points coming thick and fast, which is going to benefit a certain type of rider, isn't it, compared to what's coming up potentially next week. We're in virtual France, aren't we? And I believe there's a pretty big climb in each of the 2 laps.
Yeah, certainly is. And as we mentioned before, it's important that teams, the sports directors, they bring riders in who are suited to each of the courses. It'll be raced very, very differently. As you just said, the intermediate sprints come in thick and fast. Almost no real time to recover was there tonight. But when we go to France next week, a world that we know very well, that we've seen feature in the ZRL and of course from the virtual Tour de France that we had last year in July 2020. So a world, as I say, that these riders know well.
And one other thing that I noted from the races today is that when you looked at the top 10 and their power to weight ratios, there was quite a discrepancy really between how much they were having to do over the entire duration of the event. So I guess also, just like in the real world, there are riders who are able to really hide, not put too much power out the whole way, but there are others who hide very well and manage to use a lot more power only at the end when it matters.
Yeah, just being able to finesse your ride and be able to save as much as you possibly can. I mean, we got a huge look at that with Jackie Godby. Coming into the final kilometre, it was ever so slightly downhill and she was able to get into that super tuck. So managed just to save a little bit while the other riders are still scrapping to try and move up. She was ever so slightly off the front, just saving that energy. So if you're able to do that 10 times during a race, you're saving a lot more than a rider who is constantly making huge accelerations, those explosive moves to try and get back on terms.
And I know that Si was watching with very keen interest, not because of the race, not just because the racing was so good, but also because you are part of the GCN All-Stars team, which I can only imagine was an ironic name that you gave yourselves. Yes. But you are doing the very same course tomorrow night, aren't you?
We are indeed. Just like all of the other ZRL community teams, we are indeed doing the same course. So I, as you say, was taking some serious race notes there. My main conclusion is that we are completely screwed because we are not a team of sprinters, and that feels like that was definitely part of it. I think what I'm going to try and do is, whilst I can't contest the sprints at 15, 16 watts per kilo, I might be able to hang in the bunch and at least make the splits so that potentially at the end...
Why don't you just do what the Ionian team did and dominate all the intermediate sprints and then dominate at the finish line as well? That seemed like a great strategy.
Well, it did. We've got a good team. We got Sebas and Oscar representing from GCN Espanol. Sebas, obviously, World Tour sprinter, who's still in great shape. So basically, I'm just going to be his domestique, I think, for as long as possible until I get dropped.
Any final advice from you, Hannah, for what Si might be able to do with his team tomorrow? Or is it too late?
Just win.
In general?
Just win them all.
Just
you
win.
know,
Okay,
just win.
cool. Let me write that down.
It's the important thing. We'll check in next week and see how you got on. I'll be
Well,
watching
absolutely.
closely.
I will vlog it for you all, and we can check that out. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I wish you the best of luck, Si. I guess all that really remains for us to say is a huge thank you to Hannah Walker here for her expert insight. We'll be welcoming you back next Monday, won't we? It'll be you, Si, here on the sofa. I'm absent because I'm actually on holiday. But I hope you've enjoyed all of this at home. We'll wrap things up there, but we will be back at the same time next week, 1900 BST, and it'll be Canyon Esports and indeed the Ionian team, who lead the standings going into round 2, after some utterly brilliant performances today.
Yeah, next Monday they will be tackling the Chassepat in France, which, as you said, has a significant climb each lap. So we may well see some squad changes to bring in the climbers so that they can strut their stuff.
I'm looking forward to it already. There's also plenty of other racing to look forward to before that over on GCN Plus. On Wednesday, it is the Giro del Veneto, plus the second round of the UCI Cyclocross World Cup, whilst Friday sees the British Criterium Championships. And on Sunday, we have got a trio of races.
We do indeed. It's the brand new Veneto Classic, plus the men's and women's British National Road Championships. And then in the evening, in Europe at least, it's the third round of the UCI Cyclocross World Cup and the last of 3 rounds on US soil.
We hope you'll join us for all of them, and indeed for round 2 of the ZRL next week. We'll see you then. Bye for now.